Hi,
Good
Christine.
morning.
Good morning. It is morning to me, not to you,
Not to me, but I'm still tired, so it's okay. Hello
but
and welcome.
good morrow. Good morrow to it. That's why we drink, and also specifically Christine, since you're the one I am
Thank
looking at.
you.
How are you?
Good. How are you? We're both very like chatty and like giddy today. Well, maybe it's just me and I'm projecting, but I feel like I'm very like uh frenetic today. I don't know.
Oh, I love frenetic, Christine.
Oh no.
Um, I know I agree with you. I think I was gonna say I think I'm a little sleep deprived, but honestly, it would be weirder if I wasn't at this point. So I don't really know. I think we're both just in the same headspace and matching the
Yeah.
waves, and
Yep.
therefore we are one. You
We
know,
are one. Also, I wanted to sorry, that's not okay. Singing isn't
it
part of
was
the
more than okay, to be clear.
Put that on the record. Eva, write that down. M approved of my singing. M, why do you drink this week? I'm just curious.
That makes me feel like you've got a reason why you
Maybe.
drink. Uh, I don't have a specific reason. I mean, this is a pretty nice week. I mean, compared to the last couple weeks, I feel like it's been like really insane. So it was nice to like take a breather this week. I do want to say really quickly, this is like someone reached out and said, "Hey, Bohemian Grove, did you know that there was a superhero at Bohemian Grove?" Which like by the way, I researched it and it's like this guy like wasn't the best, but there was a guy who liked to cosplay as his own created superheroes and
Oh,
like try to like save locals. I don't know, but he went to Bohemian Grove one time. His name was Richard. I just want to bring this up before we get off track, and we will. But there was a guy named Richard McCaslin, and apparently he in 2002 he like raided the Bohemian Grove as his own made up superhero called the Phantom Patriot.
okay.
So I guess that's why I drink. But he
That's why I
apparently
drink too. What?
he saw the documentary that I mentioned by Alex Jones, and he like freaked out that kids were in danger, and so
Oh, I
he
see.
he went to go he broke in and he planned on like burning down like the big owl.
No, not me.
But he didn't
Ow.
realize he didn't realize it was made out of concrete, so when he got there he was like, well, what the fuck? And so he ended
He
up
didn't
trying
do very good research.
he literally I think did a hot none of it, but he ended up trying to burn up down a building instead, but he got caught, and then there was like some like standoff with the cops. Anyway, he also like just learning more about like some of his like interests and stuff. It sounds like he would like be in QAnon today.
Oh
So
dear.
I don't want to like give this guy too much credit, but someone did reach out and say like, oh, like a superhero who looks a lot like Captain America.
Oh boy.
Um, Also like Phantom Patriot. It's like Captain America and Ghosts made a
It
superhero together.
fits. Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, that's why I drank, because apparently there was a superhero I didn't even mention in my research yesterday.
Wow, that
Or super villain, I'm not sure. But he's not here anymore. He died. So
oh
I don't
no.
I don't feel too nervous he's gonna come after me about my opinion.
You
But he
never
seemed like someone
know.
who would be in QAnon, so it kind of freaks me out. Anyway,
Yikes. Well, that's
why
good to
do you
know.
drink?
I had no idea. That's part of it now, I guess. But
Okay.
also because that whole episode was bonkers. But what else? So this is coming out after, so I feel safe saying it, but Blaze is gone for the next few days. Not that I like don't feel safe when he's not here, but mostly just because I get paranoid when you know, you're not supposed to say when people are home, whatever.
Yeah.
True crime 101. But Blaze is leaving town for a few days to visit his family because he's bringing a car. He got a new car. It's a whole thing. And that is so not interesting. But so M has to hear it outside of the podcast. But he's gone for a few days and like I've just been feeling really weird, and there's the footsteps have gotten like super loud to the point, like on the stairs, to the point that
Oh my god.
I know, to the point that when Blaze and I are like both in bed, like reading or whatever, I'll be like, "Did you hear that?" And he's like, "Yes, I heard it. I don't want to talk about it." And we're like, "What is that?" And the cats are in our bed, and the worst is when they all kind of look up at the stairs, and it's happening so much now that I'm like, and that I'm not, and I've never been here alone for like several days at a time, so I'm not looking forward to that.
Christine, you need to
Um,
be recording these sounds and
I
shit. How do
know
you
I
know there's
should
not
be.
someone that just lives in your house, like in those horrible, scary stories?
Because I checked because you know how I look under beds and I look
Did
under.
you look in the vents?
I did
Or
because
in
Juniper likes to climb in there.
Oh my god.
But I mean, maybe you're right, but they're not very. I was going to say they're not very secretive about it, but like obviously they are. If I haven't found them yet, um, I will. What I do it like a real lunatic is I put a bunch of stuff in front of my bedroom door at night and somehow
No, I
assume
would too.
that's how
I
they're
would do the
gonna
same thing.
not come near me. I mean, I really don't think anything's gonna happen, but it is like putting me on edge, and I haven't been home like here alone for several days in a row. So I will update you. So someone also reached out and was like, Christine, like this is a demonic presence, and I honestly don't think it's like I don't feel in danger. Like they were like, oh, the covers thing, but even when I got the covers pulled off, nothing ever felt like ominous. Like I'm going to, and I've lived in places that were like something bad is here, but I don't feel
Yeah.
like that at all. I just feel like some weird energy is going on. So I'm not like in fear for my life, but I am creeped out. Let's just put it that way.
Is your mom's house safer spiritually? Like, do you think
Probably.
like
At
I
least
was gonna say,
I know
do you
it
think
better.
you could just run home like if things get too scary?
I could, but I can't really take all the animals with me because she has cats. So I would have to abandon Geo here, and you know he's my
Yeah.
firstborn. I don't feel comfortable leaving him with the demons. They're not demons, to clarify, but I don't feel comfortable leaving him here. So maybe if I get desperate enough, I will probably run home to mom crying. But
Ugh.
we'll see.
Wow.
We'll
You need to
see.
make a friend who can just take Geo and then you can just fend for yourself. That's the one thing that terrifies me about like having another life to have to take care of. It's like when your version of the end of the world is happening, like you gotta just be able to take care of you. Like if all of a sudden there
Look
was
out
like
for number one.
yeah, like if all of a sudden there was a bunch of spirits in my house, then like maybe they were demons and I couldn't flee because I had a dog, I'd be like, you know what? Fuck that. Like I was like, I just want to take care of myself.
No,
Or
because
I better be able to like hoist the dog over my shoulder and go somewhere
but I
else, you
also feel
know?
like with the dog can, Gio would, he wouldn't protect me, but I feel like a lot of dogs would be protective of their owners. Not mine particularly, but I feel like it's to have a dog is
It's even scarier though, like in terms of ghosts, like who, like what is he gonna protect you from? Like he's
yeah,
just
but
gonna
like
stare at a
what's
corner.
it gonna do to me, right? Like scare me.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I've reported on too many stories at this point of fantastical stories. So like I have no idea what the limit is at this point.
But you know what the good news is about having pets is that if one of them is not in the room, you can always say, "Oh, that was just a cat." It's so oftentimes it is, but it is so easy to just be like, "Oh, I'm sure one of the animals just like dropped something or was going up the stairs." So,
I guess so. I
because it
wonder
happens
if that
so often, you just get used to noises
mhm.
with animals. I mean,
Okay. No, I know. I'm thinking I wonder if that at all like because I don't have any animals. When I hear a sound, I'm on high alert every
right,
time.
right. Like you
So
get
like
so used to it once you have pets that like you don't even notice most of it because you're like, oh, they're just. And Juniper stomps so loudly, like he literally like slams his feet into the ground. That like at this point, I can probably just hear a man walking around and be like, oh, June, silly, silly Juniper.
But since I'm always on high alert because I don't have any animals to blame things on, I
Mhm.
would imagine your anxiety level goes even higher when all of a sudden there's an animal, when all your animals are in your bed with
That
you.
is when it gets a little bit too much. Yes.
I feel like that would be even more jarring than me always at the same baseline of terrified
That's true because
because you've
especially
got
yeah.
another reason to really be scared now.
Well, and like I haven't lived in an apartment for a while because even in LA we shared that like we had a bunch of people in a house, but like now being in a house by myself is so much scarier because I mean most of these stories you watch on like these paranormal shows they're in a house, when these things happen they're not in like an apartment complex, so it's it's something
Big Sandy
scarier.
come stay with you. Big Sandy and your well, have like a whole sibling sleepover thing.
I was going to say earlier too, like it's very easy for me to convince my brother and sister to just spend the night because I have so many snacks. So that might be just what I do.
Perfect. Well, I wish you the best. And if
Thank
you
you.
don't FaceTime me the next time
I
there
will.
are loud stomps, I'm gonna be furious.
You're not going to
Or
answer for the next 3 days. You're not going to pick up your phone. Like, nope, I don't want to be a part of it.
or as Christine says, I'll just send her a smiley face emoticon because
We got into a big discussion about this.
Christine, I don't know. Apparently, I send a lot of smiley faces to an unnerving level where
No,
Christine's
you
like
don't send them often, which is why they unnerve me when you do like not emojis. I mean like
the
colon,
emoticon.
yeah, like colon parentheses smiley face. And they always seem so like, I don't know, I'm always like, oh no, M's mad at me every time you send me one of those.
I'm sorry that I type like a dad, to be fair. I sometimes they're just easier because it's the colon's right
That's what M
there, the
says, but
parentheses right there.
then I went on full, you know, lunatic mode and I searched that smiley face in our text combos, and every time M sends it, it's like after I've sent something that I've dropped the ball or I messed something up, and M always sends a smiley face. And so I think I've just started to associate it with like I've done something wrong, and then M's like, it's okay, smiley face, or sure, smiley face. I'm like, oh my God.
I feel like I'm just trying to go the extra mile to make you not feel nervous. I don't know,
Maybe
but
that's what it is, and I'm just
I don't know. Anyway,
that doesn't matter. Nobody cares about that, but
anyway, if I
that's
find out that there are any more steps in your house, I'm just gonna send you a smiley face and be like,
no, then I'll know I'm
wish I
about
heard
to
about it. I wish I knew.
then I know I'm about to expire. Thank you very much.
Anyway, good luck. I don't envy you. I'm happy to not I'm happy that the reason I drink is because of a superhero that's not a superhero.
Yeah, yeah. Usually we start a Third Love sponsorship ad by talking about my chest, but instead today we're going to talk about a personal endorsement we received from Terry Carnation, who was on our show recently, and said Third Love is amazing for anybody, whether you have 3 boobs, 2, 1, doesn't even matter. And they have all sorts of sizes from cups AA to I, including half cups, and bands 30 to 48. So he was kind of onto something, even though he was kind of joking a little bit.
I mean, ringing endorsement from Terry Carnation, who gave us permission to use him
He
in
did.
our ad, by the way. But you can use the fitting room quiz, which Christina's talked about many a time. We love a good quiz. And like a personal shopper for your boobs, the fitting room quiz focuses on size, breast shape, current fit issues, and your personal style to deliver bras and underwear that are perfect for you. Third Love knows your one true fit is out there. So right now they're offering our listeners 20% off your first order. Go to thirdlove.com/drink now to find your perfect fitting bra and get 20% off your first purchase.
That's thirdlove.com/drink for 20% off today.
CBD isn't about what you feel. It's about what you don't feel, like stress, anxiety, pain, all the things that we go through on a constant basis.
That's right. Feals is a better way to feel better. I have used Feals for a long time before they were even a sponsor. I'm a big fan. I think I'm a huge proponent of CBD. I think it's an awesome tool to have in your arsenal, especially if you suffer from, you know, stress, anxiety, pain, sleeplessness. I think Em and I have experienced all of the above. And there's no hangover or addiction, which, you know, sometimes if I'm trying to drink less, I do turn to CBD, and I think it does the trick.
Place a few drops of Feals under your tongue and feel the difference within minutes. And the thing to remember about CBD is that finding your right dose is important.
And the Feals customer service team is dedicated to making sure you get the best use of your CBD. They've been awesome, wonderful. I've found kind of my regimen, and I highly recommend you guys try finding yours.
Start feeling better with Feals. Become a member today by going to feals.com/drink and you'll get 50% off your first order with free shipping.
That's FEALS.com/drink to become a member and get 50% automatically taken off your first order with free shipping. Feals.com/drink.
All right. I've got quite a tale for you. I stayed up extra late doing some extra research on this.
Oh, I've done sort of the same with my story, so I'm very excited. I think this is going to be a good episode.
I think it is too. It's a lot. So let's crack into it. This is the story of Helen Duncan, aka the Wartime Witch, aka the last convicted witch, aka Scotland's last witch, aka Hellish Nell.
Oh, I like that one. The last one, should have stuck with that.
Hellish Nell, I know. Ironically, Hellish Nell wasn't even about her being a witch at all. That was a nickname from childhood. So
you should have just stuck with that. That's good.
I know. She should have just started introducing herself like that the second she got into like spiritual stuff.
I love it.
Okay, so also if that name sounds familiar to you, Helen Duncan, it's because you probably recently played the escape room that I made, and she is featured in the escape room.
Aha.
She's featured in it because she is one of Harry Price's main cases that he covered. So, which shockingly, for it being one of his main cases, I feel like he gets featured very minimally in this story. I expected this to be a full out
another HP.
Yeah. But apparently he only makes a little cameo.
Hey.
So this is the story of Helen Duncan. Her name was or her legal name is Victoria Helen McCrae McFarlane.
Sure.
That was her name when she was born. She was born in 1897 in Scotland to Isabel and Archibald. She was the fourth of 8 kids, and apparently she was quite the tomboy, and she was very rowdy and fiery and had a temper, and therefore she got the name Hellish
I
Nell.
love her already.
Yeah. Do you hear these sounds, by the way, going on behind me?
No,
I
you
think
scared me. I'm already on edge. I'm like, is there somebody behind me?
I feel like the neighbors took up hammering the floorboards as a new hobby during the pandemic.
I heard that's a new quarantine hobby people are picking up.
I have literally like every room now we have a different tall item to bang on the ceiling. It just gets worse and worse. It's like it truly is like your situation, except I am in an apartment and
At
can
least you
explain it
know, yeah,
away.
you know who it is. Yeah, which is like good and bad. I feel like there's pros and cons to both.
They're both bad. So Hellish Nell. So early on, basically, Helen was showing abilities or showing signs of psychic abilities. Let me say immediately that there are 2 very strong camps again about whether or not she was a genuine medium.
Okay.
So I might be going back and forth on different tales. Basically, her grandkids are still alive and campaigning that she was legitimate. And I was listening to a few of their interviews last night or listening to an interview of theirs and reading some of their testimonies. And they are like, no joke, this person is real. And then and they're basically trying to clear her name because the overwhelming social understanding of it all is that she was a fraud.
I see.
But so some of this comes from articles about her from people who didn't know her, and some of this comes from like the actual website that her grandkid runs.
Okay.
Helen early on allegedly showed signs of psychic abilities. She apparently saw spirits and had visions of like certain topics before they even came up. I think there was like a story on the website that when she was in school, she was able to certain things in her head would show up, and then all of a sudden they would learn it in class that day, or she was able to like
Ooh.
manifest answers for her schoolwork.
Oh,
and
come on.
stuff.
I would
So
love that skill.
yeah, it says
It's too late now, but
it's a swanky power. Both of her parents allegedly also had relatives with this gift, and so it was not shocking to them, I guess, or
it's
it didn't freak them out.
a recessive gene that kind of came
It's
out.
gotta be. Doesn't it always, don't they always say that this kind of stuff like skips a generation and stuff anyway?
Yes,
So
yes, I have heard that.
so one day she told, this is just another example of her powers. One day she told her doctor not to go out that night, and the doctor didn't listen and died in a car crash.
Oh no.
Apparently this story spread through town, and even like the local minister said that she was like in cahoots with the devil or whatever.
Oh good.
By the time she was 16, she was forced to leave home, and I don't know, I saw differing accounts of that. So it could have been that she was like pregnant and like unwelcome at home, or that I saw one account saying that it was because of her gifts, like the town started getting freaked out and so she had to leave. But anyway, so she left at 16 and she went to a town called Dundee and worked in factories. She worked as a nurse, and when she worked as a nurse, one of her co-workers, I think it was even her best friend, invited her over one night, and that is when she met the co-worker's family, including the co-worker's brother, who ended up being her future husband.
Oh, cute.
So she met her husband through her friend at work, and he was a spiritualist, and his name was Henry. And apparently he also had visions in the past, and he had a vision of her when he was fighting in World War One. I saw a letter of his. I'm paraphrasing it. I hope I'm not getting it wrong, but I read it really late at night. But he wrote a letter about how when he was in the trenches, he had a vision of her.
Wow, how romantic.
Yeah,
Also
and
horrible, but also romantic.
well, apparently the first thing he ever said to her when he met her that night when she came over for dinner, he said, "So we meet at last."
I just got a goose cam.
And she had also had visions of him apparently, so they both like saw each other from across the room and knew they were the one or whatever.
Oh my gosh. Okay, because I was gonna say that's creepy if you hear that, but I guess maybe he probably knew, like she would know, they would know each other, so it wasn't creepy. It was like
Yeah, I mean, it must have been like a
recognition.
multi-layered knowing of like, oh, she'll be cool with this.
She gets me.
How long ago did he plan that line too, by the way? If he was
True.
like like we're gonna eventually meet up. So like I might as well say something real classy.
He practiced it in the mirror for several years before he finally found her.
I could imagine him like kind of failing and like being like less confident about it in the mirror for a little bit and like having to build himself back up and practice. Like so we meet at last.
No,
No,
that's
no, no, no,
stupid.
no,
No.
Hold it, save it. So we meet at last. You know,
Shoulders back.
shoulders
Eye
back,
contact.
exude confidence. So yeah, so he fought.
That's how Em and I prepare for our podcast every week.
That's how I prepared for texting you if you wanted to go to a farm with me and we weren't friends. I was like, exude confidence.
Say, when you text me a smiley face, I was like, that explains a whole lot.
That actually, that's what I meant. You're right. So Henry had fought in World War One. He had a vision of her. He was later discharged from the war because he had some heart issues, or it was rheumatic fever, which I guess is the inflammation of your heart and your joints and stuff. So Helen married him when she was 20. They had 6 kids. Their names were Bella, Nan, Lillian, Henry, Peter, and Gina. And apparently they also had 2 who died as babies.
Aww.
Henry, after he left the war, he became a cabinet maker, and Helen was like a linen cleaner, and she also worked in a bleach mill.
That's gotta be not great for your nostrils.
Oh my God, can you imagine?
No.
I clean my bathroom, like every time I clean my bathroom, my nose is a mess. Can you imagine doing that every single day?
See, Blaze, that's why I don't clean the bathroom.
That's why Allison doesn't clean the bathroom, and then I get forced to do it.
It's not true. I just don't clean the bathroom, but I like finding any excuse that I can find.
Allison and I have an agreement that I have to be the one that cleans the bathroom, and that means my nose is the only one that's ever on fire. Where was I? Oh yeah. So they were doing everything they could to support their family, but a cabinet maker and working in a bleach mill, they were, not super high paying. But when Helen was
with all those kids, or did you say that already? Sorry.
No, truly, they were just trying to support their family because they had 6 kids, and she was like 20 years old. He was a war vet. And one night while she was working at the factory, she had a vision that Henry was in danger. So she ran home and he was having a heart attack.
Oh no.
So she was able to get him help, but that vision made Henry suggest like, hey, we should like use your gifts as a means of like supporting the family. And so especially because World War I was ending and all of these people were not coming home.
Right.
And there was quite an overstock of customers who could use her services.
Right.
Especially, I think World War I don't remember, but this was when I was learning about spiritualism a while ago for a different story. But I think World War I, one of the reasons that this wave of spiritualism came about was because during that war, so many people didn't come home, and families were also prohibited from actually going to the location of the bodies to give them proper burials.
Oh my.
So there were a lot of families who like never got any closure. So this was like their version of a burial or a memorial service was to go find them and talk to them one last time with these mediums.
Wow.
If that's the case, yeah, World War I is ending and like all these people aren't ever going to see their kid again. So like, let's, use your services.
Sure.
Sorry, I'm cleaning my glasses, which means I can't see my notes. I can't even see you. You could do anything right now, Christine, and I wouldn't know.
The best part is nobody else can see it either because we have this Zoom recording on.
I actually really didn't see if you did anything. So
good.
did you do something?
I did the stupidest thing I could think of, which was just give you the double finger.
Oh, fun.
Double bird.
Double bird. Caw, caw. Okay.
You mean, ooh. People were very into my owl sounds. And by people, I mean 2 people on Twitter said they liked my owl sounds and my whale sounds and said I should make them a ringtone.
Listen, you should just become like a zoo mouth,
zoo mouth.
Where you just make different animal sounds.
I'm the next like Audubon representative. I'm actually the audiobook birdwatcher guide. I don't know.
You're actually the San Diego Zoo's Audible track, I think. So while practicing her trances to be able to then go out and be a medium for the public, apparently there was one spirit named Dr. Williams that came through to her and spoke to Henry directly and said that he was going to look after her during all of her medium work and that she was going to be very successful.
So he came through Helen.
So
talk to.
she's going to be one of those people who does seances and spirits speak through her.
Got it. And that's how Dr. What's his face came
That's how
through.
Dr. Williams came
Got
about.
it. Got it.
In the middle of one of like her, while she was practicing trances
Right.
early on. And that was like one of her, like, I think first like big successful moments of like conjuring a spirit maybe.
Oh, a man is here. Yeah. That would be very frightening, but I guess successful.
So Dr. Williams told Henry some advice, and this is a quote from Dr. Williams. He told Henry, quote, "A prayer at the start, have a Bible on hand, and build her a cabinet." So those are the 3 ways you can support her during all this medium stuff.
Build her a cabinet.
So
I guess like one of those spiritual cabinet things.
Yeah, and he was a cabinet maker.
Oh,
so
that's cute.
And I would imagine this was around the time of the Davenport brothers, and I know they had traveled a lot to the UK. So maybe that was like, if I'm trying to think of this, that if she was a fraud and if she was just trying to think of things to do, I guarantee she'd heard of the Davenport brothers,
right,
and thought they have a cabinet. So like, let's just like make up a voice and tell my husband, the cabinet maker, to make a cabinet. And all of a sudden, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not a bad idea.
So Henry made one, and I guess it was to act as like a portal so that spirits that Helen spoke to could come through easier. And Helen's trances were able to get more and more powerful. So she was so powerful that she was one of the infamous mediums who could materialize ectoplasm during her seances. And Harry Price has worked a lot with this. So I think that's where he comes in. So she could apparently make ectoplasm come out of her nose and mouth during these sittings. And one of the first spirits to use this ectoplasm was the spirit named Albert, or Uncle Albert. I guess the point of ectoplasm, according to these mediums, is that when it would come out of your body, if you were so deep in trance and so connected to the other side that you could create ectoplasm in this world, and it was almost it was using your life force to create this material that the spirits could use to create forms for them. You could like make their own physical forms so that you could see, like if someone you loved died and they came through a medium, they would be harnessing some of their life energy and then use this ectoplasm to build out their own form, so they could like walk around the room, or you could see them standing in the corner.
Right.
And it was just a way to physically be able to like build themselves out of this medium.
Okay.
So the first person to use this ectoplasm was a spirit named Albert, who came through. Apparently he had this like really thick Australian accent. He allegedly drowned, and he regularly showed up at seances. He became like a go-to regular of Helen's. And he literally became like kind of like the MC of her seances, and would like show up just to like announce what like Bonnaroo, like the lineup of other spirits that night. And so one thing that's interesting is people say, so a really thick Australian accent, almost as if she were trying to show that it wasn't her, she just picked a different accent that was very different from her. Kind of like how a lot of mediums would like use a different voice or something for spirits. So a lot of people think that, maybe this was her just using a different accent, so people would think it was a different person.
Okay, sure.
Another regular spirit was Peggy, who was a little girl, and she would like run around the room and sing and stuff.
Oh my God.
And those were like her 2 regulars. People saw Albert and Peggy all the time at her seances. So pretty soon Helen was very popular, and her husband even became her full-time assistant. And she was offered to even regularly perform seances with the Scottish Spiritualist Society, or the SSS. And this is how she would start a seance. So if you were lucky enough to see one of these, this is how it would start. She would apparently get naked.
Oh, God. Man, no wonder Albert keeps showing up to read the set list. I mean, geez.
And she would let people see that she wasn't hiding anything. So it was a way to like prove that
my.
No tricks on my sleeves, because I have no sleeves.
I love that I love that the Scottish, what is it, Spiritualist Society was like, let's hire her again for the company party. Let's bring her
Like,
back.
talk about entertainment. She would then get completely dressed in black and she would go into a trance. And this is when Albert and Peggy would usually take over.
Mm,
And they would help bring out whatever other spirits were nearby that wanted to come forward.
okay.
So this is when she would begin to have ectoplasm come out of her and physical manifestations, or I'm assuming like shadow figures or human forms would appear in the room.
Mm-hmm.
She was getting really big coming up on the 1930s. And in the late 20s, there was one guy named Harvey Metcalf who was a photographer and came and took pictures while he was at the sitting. I don't know if this was something that Helen consented to,
Right.
but pictures were taken. It was flash photography in what was supposed to be a dimly lit room.
Mm.
Harvey got pictures of Peggy and ectoplasm.
Oh,
So the pics, yikes,
the
the photos.
pics. You're
I
trying
feel
to
like I
prove
do
that
that.
you're not a grandpa when you text or whatever you said earlier. I
Like
get
I
it.
don't send emoticons. I got my pics,
I send pics.
like my dad with the cloud. I feel like I do that so often. I say pics instead of like pictures on here. Sorry.
Pics.
This is not the first time I've done that.
Also, it's just funnier because it's like old time photography. So it's like, I took a few pics. He snapped a few pics. Like it's the opposite of how long it probably took to take and develop a photograph.
It wasn't a pic. It was a snapshot photograph, like a long exposure shot. So these pictures of Peggy and the ectoplasm showed that Peggy was probably, depending on what camp you side with, there's one camp that says the photographic evidence of Peggy is a very creepy doll made of paper mache and bed
Ugh.
sheets.
Oh no. Oh no.
Apparently like there may be like wet cloth, wet fabric was thrown over a doll to make it look like the ectoplasm like
Ew.
had started creating a human form.
Right.
So anyway, that comes back later, but there is a picture now of like, I mean, let me see if I can even just find it and send it to you because it's kind of like out of this world. I should have saved it on my end.
I actually have photos to send to you
Peggy.
today too, weirdly enough, which we rarely do.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, we never do this. Okay,
No.
I'm gonna send you two and you just tell me what you think. Okay.
Okay.
So that's Peggy.
Oh my God. Oh no.
I mean, it's the same
Oh my
picture,
God.
just one is close up, but like it's clearly like it looks like a sheet and a mask, like a human.
Yeah, it looks like a very poorly made mask. I mean, it's definitely not real. Like it's definitely
It's not human. Although
no.
one could argue that that's just how spirits come back, I guess. But
One could argue, but also the quote unquote ectoplasm looks like a scarf tied around her head.
yeah, it's like it's supposed to be coming out of her nose, and it's clearly coming out of like under her blindfold. Like it's
Like her
not in her
headband.
nose. Yeah, it's not in her nose.
Yeah, that looks a little suspicious.
It's, as the kids would say, that's sus, fam.
That's Em, you're trying too hard today, my friend.
Anyway, let me get back to my emoticons. So yeah, so that was.
What did you Google so people can like search for it?
I typed in Helen Duncan Peggy.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it looks sorry to say, it looks kind of ridiculous. It looks like a scary thing you'd find in like a like a behind a theater production.
It looks like an old vintage like like a mask.
Yeah, yeah.
For a costume party, covered in a bedsheet.
Yes.
So then a couple years later, the London Spiritualist Society, which by the way, just call back to previous episodes. This is one of the groups that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle,
Right.
And Harry Price were both part of.
The LSS.
The LSA. The
LSA.
London,
Damn it.
you're thinking the SSS, the Scottish Spiritualist Society.
The LSA.
I'm
Man.
shocked that so early on in the world, there were so many organizations like this. Like if they were all thriving today, I would be a member of all of them.
Can you imagine?
So the London Spiritualist Alliance had been hearing about Peggy. And also, I don't know if this was at the same time or a separate time, but Harry Price had his own lab that he did his own experiments at. And for both of them, Harry Price investigated Helen.
Okay.
This was in 1931. So Harry P is on the scene.
Thank God
And
for HP.
he after first learning about the ectoplasm, Harry Price assumed it was like regurgitated items that were like
Right.
coming out of her mouth or something.
Yuck.
And so he wanted to do an x-ray. And before getting to actually take the x-ray, apparently Helen had like a quote nervous breakdown and like tried to punch the doctor.
Oh,
She was like pulling her clothes off.
she does that a lot though. That's not weird for her.
She seems to be naked twice in this story at least. And she fell down the stairs
Oh,
and her husband went to go help her up, but Harry Price was like, I think this is all like a ruse, and like
she's trying to get out of this.
she's trying to get out of the x-ray, and also she was being so dramatic that her husband would have to go help her so she could hand off evidence to
I
him.
see. Like, pull this out of my nose really quickly.
Yeah, yank it out of my entire
Pull
throat.
this scary paper mache doll out of my nose real quick, just real subtly.
And then Harry Price said like, hey, like, husband, show me your pockets, and Henry wouldn't do it. So
Wow.
eventually Helen did agree to give them a sample of ectoplasm, and Harry Price said that the ectoplasm, after testing it, was definitely cheesecloth covered in or for people who don't know what cheesecloth is, think of like gauze or
Yeah.
something. It was covered in egg whites,
Ew.
like raw egg whites, so it would look slimy and thick. She was
Especially like coming out of your nose, it's like snotty almost.
also the way it got in there. She would swallow massive chunks of it.
No, thank you.
Ugh. Few things really make me want to like hurl, but like the
Are you
thought
sure?
of like,
Because I feel like I pretty regularly make you create that.
no, this
face.
one makes me physiologically, I actually like having a gag reflex right now that I'm trying to like
physiologically speaking.
I'm really trying to keep it together, but like this really makes like the thought of swallowing like raw egg white.
Okay, well now you're making me ill. God.
Stacks of gauze. Ugh, okay. Of all the things we talk about, why is that the one? But it's something that like,
well, if you're not supposed to put stuff down there, that's not food time.
It really is making me so grossed out. But
And
so
pull
apparently,
ugh.
so chunks of it would come out, and she had taught herself how to regurgitate it either through her mouth or her nose.
Like how those boys did in lunch class, where they would like lunch class. I'm literally
lunch was a class. I learned a lot.
Not an American child. This is why I had no friends at lunch class. Nobody would sit with me at lunch class. No, yeah, like when they would like be able to spit milk
hock a loogie out of their nose and shit. Yeah,
they'd like drink milk and it would come out their nose, and I was like, why would you do that? I guess, but
okay, but imagine it's now like fabric covered in egg whites.
That's what I can't get over. That's horrifying.
It really is so. Of all things, that one gets me, and I don't like. We talk about blood every fucking day, but egg whites, runny. Okay, so
it's bad. Also, like, you would choke. I feel like you
would for sure choke. You would in
trouble. Like you'd.
So
whatever.
This is one of the arguments, by the way, that for all the people who believe that she's genuine, because they're like, nobody could do that. Nobody could swallow massive chunks of fabric.
Excuse me, have you watched Chris Angel? Chris Angel has done a lot of crazier things. Okay,
Chris Angel is his own form, to be fair.
Thank you.
He's a one of a kind.
He's a rare bird.
He also realized that a lot of like the human forms that were coming out of this ectoplasm were just pictures cut out from magazines, and like there was once like a hand that manifested during a seance, and he said like that was literally a rubber glove. Like,
oh,
so he has his own opinions, and he feels like between like ransom letters cut out of a magazine and egg whites, there's nothing real going on here.
Well, I mean, because people swallow swords, like
that's true. You're right.
You know what I mean? Like you can teach yourself to do some pretty wild things with your body. So this isn't.
I think raw egg in general freaks me out, and so the raw egg white part and just like throwing back a bunch, like so much of it that it cakes fabric.
Absolutely foul, but I think I can imagine someone would be able to teach themselves to do that. Like if someone can swallow a sword or whatever.
People do crazy things to support their family of
their
8.
Dreams.
that's mother's intuition right there. That's a maternal instinct. I could not swallow egg whites.
I hope not, because I feel like then I'm not cut out for any sort of parenting in the future. No, thank you.
So the way that he collected this ectoplasm is it's a funny quote, and then it turns into like a not so funny quote by the end. But this is a quote from Harry Price about collecting the ectoplasm. Harry Price says, quote, "The sight of half a dozen men, each with a pair of scissors, waiting for the word was amusing. It came and we all jumped. One of the doctors got a hold of the stuff and secured a piece. The medium screamed and the rest of the teleplasm went back down her throat."
Oh, okay.
Which means like
That's dangerous.
imagine first of all you put fabric inside of your body and then you somehow teach it to like kind of come out of your nose, and then imagine a bunch of people ripping it out of your
With
face
scissors, and then you're trying to get it back, so you have to like
and you're
swallow it.
like
Okay,
trying to like
that's
suck it back
honestly
in.
foul. That's the worst thing you've said so far, I think.
How did she not vomit?
That's what
I
she
don't
probably had
get
to.
it.
That's how I think that's what they do. They like train their gag reflex to go home or something. I'm not really
That's an
sure.
Avengers fucking gag reflex. I don't there
Ugh.
that
It's
is
like a
out of sight.
non-existent gag reflex. I mean, you'd
It's the
have to.
exact opposite of my gag reflex, which is
No, which is
prominent right now.
physiologically prominent, as I would say.
I don't know why I said physiologically. I'm so stupid.
No, you're
But
not. I like it.
okay, so then he says this time it wasn't cheesecloth. So when they got that,
Oh,
so the second time she used something other than cheesecloth. It proved to be paper, which they now also say on some articles was like a toilet paper roll, soaked in egg white again and folded into a flat tube, so like rolled up. It's like rolled up paper towel roll or toilet paper roll.
that's so
Which like
disgusting.
which is even more aggressive on your nasal
I
cavity.
was just
like
thinking it would be so scratchy.
imagine if someone ripped a toilet paper roll out of your fucking nostril.
That was
Like how
going
do
down your
you
throat. I mean, it's like
Christine?
when they used to mummify people, and they would go through the nose. Like it always freaked me out so badly because that's a really sensitive part of your damn body because it's right by your brain.
I can't process anything happening to my nose. It really really I mean obviously after today, but it really fucks me up. So like this just to finish out the quote, apparently this sailor in particular comes forward during the seance because his mother is in the audience.
Oh dear.
And
Okay.
so this sailor starts saying, "My ship is sunk." And also apparently she like Helen was able to materialize through ectoplasm, whatever that means, was able to provide in the middle of the seance a sailor's hat from the HMS Barham, which is the ship he was
Oh my
on.
God.
And so between literally having a hat and saying, and like somehow knowing that this woman who has a son on that ship was there saying, "My ship is sunk." So the mother hadn't heard anything
Oh, so
like
the mother
that.
didn't wasn't
Yeah,
there like because her son died. It was just like
she would,
happened to be.
yeah, it was kind of like just at a seance how like certain spirits will come forward based on who's in the
Oh.
room. This person allegedly, I mean, going off of the argument that she's legit and that Helen
Sure.
Duncan really just was in a trance and spirits were talking through her. Someone's mom was in the audience. That spirit came forward and said, "It's me, Sailor Sid, and I'm on the HMS Barham, and here's my hat, and also my ship is sunk." But
Oh.
nobody knew. But nobody knew about that yet.
Oh no.
So the mom freaks out and starts asking around, tries to like reach like, I don't know, Navy higher ups and is like,
Sure.
what's going on? Where's my son? And I saw on one of the articles that she said something along the lines to the spirit that was talking to her. The mother was like, "Oh no, like my son's ship hasn't sunk. I would have heard about that." And the spirit looked at her and said, "Wait 3 weeks."
Oh God.
I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I heard in one of the articles.
Right.
But anyway, she asks around and eventually it does come out that the HMS Barham had sank, but it was top secret information and that over 880 of the 1100 men had died on board.
Oh no.
Apparently it was top secret because the British wanted the Germans to think that the ship was still a threat and hadn't sank.
Sure.
And so one article even stated that the Navy allegedly forged Christmas cards from dead soldiers to like in case there were any like double agents, people would think that these sailors were totally fine and the ship was still afloat.
If that's true, that's really sad.
I don't again, only one source said that and they said allegedly. So it's probably just a rumor, but for the sake of the story, that's pretty intense.
Yeah.
So rumors spread that Helen predicted a third sinking of a ship also called the HMS Broadwater, So now that she has talked about 3 different instances like this, she was now a UK security risk.
Well, I was thinking, like, is she torpedoing these things? Like, what is she doing?
Well, so she was basically the government was afraid that she knew other information, whether she was like literally a mole eavesdropping and using this for her show, or she legitimately had spirits like outing the government.
Like, no matter how she was getting this intel.
No matter what, she was ruining secret missions. And so
Oh my God, how crazy is that?
the police were now paying attention to her. And this again, by the way, only like grew her audience base, because now it's like, whether or not it's true, like maybe we'll just like get secret government war intel. Realistically, the way she could have known about at least the big one, the HMS Barham with the sailor on it, she could have known because one local paper had accidentally leaked it. And she lived in Portsmouth where all of the letters to the families were coming through. So there was a bunch of locals who were finding out that their kid had died on the ship, and it just hadn't been released to anybody except families. But this was the Navy hub where a bunch of families lived. So she probably just overheard it.
880 people died. Like, that's going to spread quickly once family members find out. Yeah.
When 880 families are getting that letter. Yeah. So there's a chance that she just legitimately heard it because she was in the town where all of these families were living.
Wow.
But especially because she had that sailor hat that she created, realistically, she could just made a fucking prop and like brought it in. But they considered this like a potential security breach, and they had no idea how she could have even gotten
during
it.
wartime, like that's no joke.
They even started wondering, like, is she a medium? Is she a spy who's just like gone rogue? Like, what is happening here?
With a side hustle, a spy with a side hustle.
So in 1944, 3 years later, so basically for those 3 years, they were like, we don't technically have anything on her, but like we're gonna keep an eye on her and like be more aware of what she's saying. So 3 years later, Operation Neptune, aka D-Day, was in the works, and training had already started. And basically, the chief of police was like, "We need to be. It's better off to be safe than sorry. And if we're about to like pull through with this D-Day thing, which like could make or break us, she can't accidentally spread any secret intel. Like she could ruin our plan." And so the cops raided one of her seances, and basically higher up authorities demanded she be put in jail, even though they technically didn't have anything new on her.
Oh, wow.
So this is where her grandkids to this day, especially one granddaughter named Margaret, this is like the big issue that they're still trying to address, is that she was wrongfully jailed because they just needed a reason because the government was scared of her. To keep her from spreading any more intel, the cops raided one of her seances, and while trying to arrest her, the cops also tried to grab at some of the ectoplasm, and apparently it went back down her throat.
Ugh.
They didn't find anything on her, but her and 3 other people at the seance were arrested because 2 of them, it was their property that they were allowing Helen to have her seance on, and the other was Helen's assistant for the day because her husband was sick or something.
Okay.
So all 4 of them get arrested.
All right.
They were charged with vagrancy, which was kind of a catch-all at the time. And they were also charged with conspiracy. But the government really wanted to hold her and make something stick. So the thing that's like, that her granddaughter's like, this is fucked up, is that not only did they change her charge from vagrancy and conspiracy, they changed it to a 200-year-old law that hadn't been used in over 100 years. And it was called the Witchcraft Act of 1735.
Oh, come on.
Because they needed something that would hold her and like make sure that she was, from what her granddaughter is saying, like giving her this charge made her guilty before she ever went to trial, because they found a law that would specifically hold her. Like by definition, she had already, fallen into it. So, so the Witchcraft Act was basically fraud for spiritual activity. And a lot of people think that when you hear the Witchcraft Act and it's from the 1700s, people immediately think, oh, witch trials.
Sure.
So that is its own problem, which we'll talk about in a second. But it basically, what it legitimately was just fraud, but specifically spiritual medium fraud. The actual verbiage of it is, quote, pretending to use human conjuration that through the agency of Helen Duncan, spirits of deceased persons should appear to be present. And then Helen also got charged with larceny, which was another catch-all at the time, that was, quote, falsely pretending that she was in a position to bring about the appearances of the spirits of deceased persons.
Right.
And like I said, a lot of people think that this Witchcraft Act was meant to punish and arrest witches, but realistically, it was to punish people pretending to be witches. So it was like, we know it's not us saying we think you're a witch and now you're in trouble. It's we know you're pretending to be a witch, and so we're going to catch you on that.
That makes sense. I mean, it makes sense.
Makes sense.
Quote unquote.
But because it sounded like a witch trial, the media sensationalized this thing, and it was a media craze. Like, I mean, Helen's name is just getting higher and higher in the ranks in terms of celebrity.
Right.
And so there were headlines in the story. There were like headlines that were sensationalized about her. One was called "The Story of a Ghost That Did Not Like Lipstick," and another was "Women Tell of Spirit Kisses." And like it's just all of these like crazy storylines that were over the top just because this was such a wild story.
Sure.
They even had all the newspapers were drawing up cartoons about like witches riding broomsticks in court and shit. It was like all over the place. So people took it as she was a witch, even though she was just a medium.
Right.
Or maybe not even a medium,
Purporting
but she was never
to be a medium. Right.
But she was never even a witch. So the BBC actually even interrupted their own war coverage to to announce that she had been arrested. Like it got really crazy. So
oh my God.
Spiritualists were pissed that the court used this outdated law to go after her. First of all, some believe that she was super legit. But also whether or not she was legit, the cops decided for her that she was a fraud when they charged her with fraud, whether or not they had proof of that.
Got it.
At her trial, the prosecution had 5 witnesses, but the defense had up to 50. And these were all just people who were willing to step in and testify that they had seen her powers at work and like try to prove that she wasn't a fraud, and therefore they could get her off. So people from all walks of life, many with like decent social power, showed up to be like, she's legit. She's a medium. I've been in her seances. Like this is no joke.
She's a pillar of the community.
Many of them had even said that they had seen her conjure up spirits which like spoke different languages, or like would just walk up to members in the audience and kiss them because they hadn't seen each other in years. Which means like if this isn't legitimate, then like Helen Duncan was like making out with people.
I mean, listen, she's naked, she's kissing, she's having a good time.
Or like Peggy, the like creepy little paper mache doll might have been like running up and kissing people.
Oh my God.
Or maybe, I don't know, materialized spirits were also kissing people.
Or
I'm
maybe
not sure.
She had like actors coming out to be, how some of them had like kids and teens play these roles.
That's actually a great point.
Although then having them kiss people is also really questionable.
Yeah. Well, let's hope they weren't minors. Let's also hope that like none of this, like that one bullet was even true. Maybe that was just like something, Maybe
that was just their local Cosmo Girl coverage or whatever. Yeah.
But so there's a lot of people who are testifying like wild stuff. One of the witnesses said that he saw his wife every time he went to one of her sittings. Another one said that he saw his high school sweetheart. Another said that he saw Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. One of them said one saw her father, one saw her sister hours before she died, which means that like Helen Duncan would have no knowledge that she had just died. So how did
unless she came and said, "My sister's really sick. I'm worried about her," and then I don't know, but that's
it could have been. What's funny is the person who testified that they saw Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. They said it must have been him because, quote, he would have been embarrassed to appear at such a shoddy affair as what Duncan was offering. So like,
oh, ouch.
Ouch to Helen Duncan, but also thank you for testifying for me. So despite all the testimonies, the jury didn't fall for it, especially with the evidence against her, because those pictures from the 20s with the ectoplasm and the Peggy creation.
The Peggy creation. Questionable.
Those appeared, and like everyone was like, yeah, that's fake. Harry Price apparently told of his findings and how she came off as fake. There were several stories about her being exposed in her past, her previous fraud arrests. Also, Helen's maid, I only saw this in one article, but Helen's maid allegedly purchased a lot of cheesecloth for her.
Oh,
So people were
that's
like,
fishy.
okay, that explains it. The prosecutor called Helen a quote, an unmitigated humbug who could only be regarded as a pest to a section of society.
Why didn't you list that as one of her nicknames? Because that is
That's because that's
catchy.
what I call you.
That's
Um,
my nickname. How dare they?
some people thought the entire trial was a waste of time, including
LOL.
Winston Churchill.
Who's like, I'm
He
running a war right now, everybody.
he so first of all, he was like a believer in this stuff and like had gone to
Yeah.
sittings, but he even wrote about this later and said, he wrote to the Home Secretary and said, let me have a report on why the Witchcraft Act of 1735 was used in a modern court of justice. What was the cost of this trial to the state, observing that witnesses were brought from Portsmouth and maintained here in this crowded London for a fortnight, and the recorder kept busy with all this obsolete tomfoolery to the detriment of necessary work in the courts. So he was like, I want to know why you used an outdated law. I want to know what the price was to house all of the jury for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And like, why the fuck was our recorder busy with this
Like
when
occupied,
there's
right.
actual shit to pay attention to?
All this tomfoolery is running rampant.
So he was like, this is not worth our time. What are you doing? So most records say that it took 25 minutes, but I saw one article that said it was an hour and a half. But very quickly, the jury came back and found that Helen was guilty, even though there was like 40 plus people who had testified. They just saw like the pictures of cheesecloth and Harry Price, and
Sure.
they were like, okay, you're probably guilty.
Right.
She was sentenced to 9 months in Holloway prison, no bail. And fun fact, the others who were arrested, because the other three who got arrested with her, they got basically fined or put on probation, but she got sent away.
Okay.
And again, her granddaughter maintains that this is because the government wanted her locked down during D-Day so she wouldn't spill anything. So while inside, she promised that she would stop doing seances when she got out, and she was released after only 6 months instead of 9 months. That promise didn't last long because she allegedly even held seances in her cell with other inmates. And the publicity of her being charged under the Witchcraft Act was like so intense that by 1951, the government repealed the Witchcraft Act to make sure nobody else
Okay,
could
good.
ever get charged for that. They ended up replacing it with the Fraudulent Mediums Act, which is
Oh,
just
it's like way more
this.
specific.
It's the same thing. It's just a different name.
That's true.
The act is for, quote, persons who fraudulently act as spiritualistic mediums or fraudulently exercise powers of telepathy, clairvoyance, or other similar powers.
I mean, to be fair, I do find that pretty shitty, but like,
Yeah.
and crime. I mean, I can see why that would be a crime to take advantage of people, take their money, and say, "Oh, your dead son is here." I mean, I get why that's
the only thing that
frowned upon.
sucks. The only thing that sucks about it, which Helen Duncan saw specifically, is that if someone already decides you're a fraud without any
That's
evidence,
the thing. How do you decide that?
then
Right.
you can just charge them with that, whether or not it's true.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the cheesecloth is
It's pretty damning. The
yeah,
pictures
pretty
of
damning.
Yeah, it's not cute. Also, this though, I think Harry Price or not Harry Price, Harry Houdini had already died. But for someone who hated mediums, he would have really loved this day in 1951 when the Fraudulent Mediums Act came through. That would probably have been what he considered a success after all of his work
Good
trying to
point.
expose these people. So, fun fact: Harry Houdini in the sky was like very stoked about it.
In the sky.
So basically, the whole point of changing it was just so it would sound different than being a literal witch hunt. Anyway, that act came out. Helen Duncan was the last person in Britain to be jailed for the Witchcraft Act of 1735, but she was not the last to be convicted because only 8 months later, 72-year-old Jane Rebecca York was also charged with the Witchcraft Act. But probably because 8 months before the whole Helen Duncan thing happened, they were like, we can't let people know we also charged this person. So like, let's just like, we're not even going to try. Like, we'll just they charged her like $5 and they were like,
oh,
go on your merry way. Like, let's not talk about this again. So she was not the last to be charged, but she was the last to be imprisoned by the Witchcraft Act.
I see. Okay. Got it.
There was only one person after her who like kind of got a slap on the wrist and that was it. So when she got out, she was released in 1956 and they found They found out that she was doing seances again, even though she promised she'd stop. So they raided one of her seances. They searched her. They found nothing. But during this raid, the cops tried to arrest her or tried to like grab for the ectoplasm or something. They were, they were being around her. I don't know what they were trying to do, but they touched her at some point and she was mid trance. And in the medium world, if you're mid trance and someone touches you, that's like a huge no.
Okay.
One theory is that because she had ectoplasm released, if you like woke her up from her trance and the ectoplasm hadn't like resurfaced inside of her, then you could like kill her or hurt her or whatever. So the fact that she got woken up in the middle of having this ectoplasm all over her, after the raid, they found like second degree burns on her,
Oh
and
my God.
5 weeks later, she was dead.
Oh my God. What?
So she died at 59. She died December 6th, 1956. Doctors say it was diabetes and heart failure, but spiritualists who are still like huge fans of her say that it was because she was interrupted during the sitting and
Question.
yeah.
Can you get second degree burns from bleach? I just wonder if the bleach had anything to do with any of this.
Interesting. I don't know.
Because doesn't it burn your skin?
Oh, for sure.
So I don't know. That's just.
I don't know if they were like old second degree burns or if they were like brand new. I don't know.
I'm like maybe she's using bleach as her new egg white technique.
I don't know. Maybe I have no clue.
I don't think
But
snorting bleach through your nose is really
a class act.
I think she would probably know not to do that, but who knows?
No, we never found out what the second degree burns were.
That's weird.
But there were two of them. There was one on her stomach and one on her chest. And 5 weeks later, she died. And even though doctors have like a more legitimate medical explanation to that, spiritualists say that it's a cover up for the fact that she was interrupted mid trance.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so she died in 1956. In 1954, 2 years before she died, fun fact, spiritualism became an officially recognized religion by Parliament.
Oh.
And as of 2008, the Scottish Parliament has continued to reject a petition to pardon her because her granddaughter's still trying to pardon her imprisonment.
Oh, I see.
So the Scottish Parliament has rejected that petition. In 2010, the BBC broadcasted a radio show about her called The Last Witch Trial.
Ooh.
And there's a statue of Helen at the Sterling Smith Art Gallery and Museum. I don't know if it's still there or not, but it was there at one point. And the last thing I'm going to say is Helen was still known in Helen is still known in spiritualist circles, and there's a campaign for her imprisonment to be pardoned. It's ran by her grandkid Maggie at helenduncan.org, where it discusses her life and has a petition for you to sign. I think as of last night, there was almost 1,000 signatures. And the site also has testimonies for people who knew Helen and swear she was the real deal. And Margaret knows Helen was legit and says her grandma was guilty even before the trial, because the Witchcraft Act originally said the conjuration of evil spirits, but it had been amended before she went to trial as conjuration of spirits, just in general. And so they were like, well, yeah, that's exactly what she even claims to do. So no matter what, she's in trouble. And if the government wants her put away for a certain amount of time to hold her from spreading info, that's the perfect scapegoat. So anyway, that's how she claims the government guaranteed she would be imprisoned. And this is one of the main quotes on the website. To this day, debate rages as to whether she was fraudulent or genuine. 20 years ago, I decided to find out all I could about my family members and sitters, as well as the official records. My research has convinced me that Helen Duncan was a genuine materialization medium, the like of which had never seen before or since. I believe her gift was so accurate that D-Day looming, the British government felt it necessary to imprison a woman who they feared might unwittingly betray wartime secrets. Helen had already done this on 2 occasions by materializing spirits of sailors from the HMS Hood and HMS Barham, and before the loss of those ships was made public. If, having read the accounts of what took place at her sittings, you also believe a miscarriage of justice took place, please sign the online petition to exonerate Helen Duncan, an extraordinary woman and a wonderfully caring mother and grandmother. My family and I thank you, Margaret Hahn.
Okay, so that's her granddaughter's statement.
That's the statement. And also she's gone on to do interviews and everything, and she is dead set. And also testimonies on her website are like, no, this is legit. I went to a million of her seances. Like, I know that this is no hoax. So there are people who really, 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 really vouch
I just say
And
Google that photo. I'm sorry. It's ridiculous looking. Like it's
the
clearly
and some
phony.
people will explain that like that's just what spirits look like when they come
No, it's
back. I
not.
know.
I
I know.
mean,
I know.
I know. Okay. And here's the thing. Here's where I stand. I'm not saying she didn't have any gifts or she wasn't. Maybe she really truly did, and then just to kind of make the business work, they added kind of
Yeah, they
skills and
exaggerated it. They gave it
yeah.
dramatic flair.
Yeah, like if you were to do a TV show, like I mean, maybe some GA, some bagel bites, like sure, maybe you have a gift or whatever, but then you like totally over, blow it or play it to kind of get interest in an audience. And if other spirituals are doing this, ectoplasm is one thing where I'm like, I don't know about that.
I'm with you. I think she probably had some talents
It
that most
sounds
people
like she
don't.
did. Yeah.
I mean, the testimonies are at least parts of the testimony to me are very convincing. To some of the testimonies I read, and then other parts again with the ectoplasm, I'm just like I've never seen it, and therefore I don't know. But there are people on there who say like I have been to not only her seances, but I have felt ectoplasm. It feels otherworldly. Like I'm like okay, but yeah, sticking your hand through a shitload of egg white feels kind of otherworldly. So
Especially in the
like
dark in a dim room and
yeah,
it looks
yeah.
like a person. I mean, it's just there were so many people who did that, and I feel like there's a reason people don't like mediums and stuff today don't really do that anymore. And
Yeah. And also like now with the power of like my stance is that the power of like psychology at the time when you're like desperate
yeah.
to reconnect with somebody and you're in the dark and there's like so many mind games that could like make you
Mm-hmm.
feel like this is a one of a kind experience. I don't know. I'm trying to be very down the middle here,
Yeah,
but
yeah. I don't think I mean, to be fair, I
some
don't think the imprisonment was necessarily a fair thing. I think that was pretty fucked up. So I'm not saying they should have put her
right.
in jail, but
And that's the main part. And the one of the interviews I read was, or one of the interviews I listened to, they were saying like all we really care about is that the fact that she was like entrapped and like this
that
was
was
like a
pretty fucked up.
bullshit
I
imprisonment
agree.
and like under an outdated law, like they just didn't fairly try her and they shouldn't have had to try her to begin with. So they that's where they stand versus whether or not you believe. It's just like this was shitty and like
Right,
the
right,
government
right.
won't say anything
Won't
about it.
pardon
So
her for that. Yeah. I
right.
understand that. I mean,
So
I can
anyway,
understand.
I'm just nervous that that woman might listen to
No,
this
I
and then
mean, I don't think
so
we're like slandering her grandmother. I'm just saying, I
no.
have a hard time with the ectoplasm bit, but I understand why you would be upset that your grandmother was, put away for 6 months. It's pretty screwed up.
Yeah, so her stance is she is just trying to clear the name. So there you go.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
which
the
I
story
understand.
of Helen Duncan.
Wow, that's cool. I've never heard of her before.
I only heard about her when I was looking up Harry Price for the first time and then I thought, "Oh, I'll cover it later." And I totally forgot until I was doing this escape room and I was like, "Oh,
Oh,
I remember that name."
yes.
So, but yeah, apparently she's considered the last convicted witch.
I love it. That was so cool. That's not what I was expecting, but it was great.
Yeah. Are you hiring for spring and what type of role might you be hiring for? Maybe you need someone who can wear many hats, which can be challenging.
Like literally or figuratively?
Maybe you're looking for like a hat wearer
A hat
and
model.
a human coat rack.
Yes.
And that could also be really difficult, but no matter what type of person, what type of role you're looking for, ZipRecruiter is there for you.
It's true. We were trying to find a person to help us manage a podcast and who also was able to handle two Geminis. And that's a tough thing to find in the job market. So we were able to find the Eva through ZipRecruiter. They can help you find qualified candidates fast. And now you can try it for free at ziprecruiter.com/drink.
ZipRecruiter's matching technology finds people with the right experience for your job and actively invites them to apply. That's exactly how we found Eva, our human coat rack. And she has, I mean, we can't imagine anybody better. And right now you can try it for free at our only our listeners get it link at ziprecruiter.com/drink. Try ZipRecruiter for free and we get credit for sending you.
Once again, that's ziprecruiter.com/drink. I've been waiting for this ad. I am going to introduce everybody to Bright Cellars. All right, everybody. And That's Why We Drink is supported by Bright Cellars. If you have ever been overwhelmed in the wine aisle like I have and just bought a random wine and you didn't even like it, don't worry, you're not alone. I do it all the time. Bright Cellars uses a sophisticated wine algorithm to match you with wines you're guaranteed to love. All you have to do is take their 30-second quiz and bam, personalized wine right to your door. It showed up and I just have never, I like shrieked at the delivery person. I felt kind of bad.
Once again, we love a good quiz. And Bright Cellars, I got to watch Allison do the quiz. There's only 7 questions, but they were all fun. I was like, what's your favorite type of chocolate? What's your favorite type of juice? But Bright Cellars is now offering premium, sustainable, sparkling, and biodynamic wines.
You can always switch up the amount of reds and whites. Like I'm more of a red person, but sometimes I'm like, throw a white in there. But the package they sent was absolutely perfect. Everything I could have wanted. And That's Why We Drink listeners, we are giving you 50% off your first 6 bottle order from Bright Cellars. So go to brightcellars.com/drink. That's Bright Cellars, CELLARS.com/drink to take their 30-second quiz to get your wine matches and receive 50% off your first 6 bottle order.
Get your matches. You won't regret it. Bright Cellars, discover wine you love.
What?
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 Did you change your name forever ago?
Yeah, I changed my name. I was hoping you'd realize while we were recording.
I literally just saw it for the first time. Oh my gosh, Christine.
What is it for the audience?
It's the smiley faces.
How does it make you feel? Not very good, huh?
Makes me feel like my name.
Oh no. See, the frown face I can appreciate. That I'm like direct understanding of your feelings. There's no
I like how
smile.
It's just the shift of the parenthesis, and all of a sudden you're
all
like
the difference.
Like now I know your entire situation.
It's true. It's like whether a smiley face is a nose or not. It says a lot about a person.
Well, anyway, there you go, Christine.
Anywho.
How was your pee? Was it nice?
I walked into a door really hard, so I'm gonna have a bruise later. But otherwise, great. Thank you for asking.
Excellent.
I also changed my name to a bunch of smiley faces to give you a taste of your own medicine.
Yeah.
I am so excited right now.
Why? I gotta know your story.
I am so excited. I've been wanting to cover this since the day we started the podcast. I know.
What?
Okay, this is the story of the Somerton Man.
I don't know that.
I'm
so mad because I want to be like as stoked as you.
It's just one of those cases that has like haunted my brain forever.
Holy shit. Okay, great.
In 2016, I started listening to podcasts and I listened to Astonishing Legends. I think this might have been the first episode of a podcast I ever listened to.
Whoa.
Because I remember like reading, because I used to just sit at home when I was super unemployed and broke and just like read unresolved mysteries and like, Reddit threads and stuff. And I remember reading about this and someone said, oh, there's a great podcast episode about this on a show called Astonishing Legends. And I was like, what's a podcast episode? And I found it and I was like, wow, this is good. So I got super into Astonishing Legends. But they did a 4-part series on this and their episodes are notoriously long. So each episode's like 2+ hours. So it is super in-depth.
Is this a multi-parter for you?
No, mine is not a multi-parter because in their episodes, they even interviewed one of the researchers I talked to. Like their episodes go like super in-depth and they tend to talk a lot, which is kind of why I like it. I feel like it's very calming to me. Like they just talk. It's like you're listening to 2 people like talk about something creepy and they just exchange theories and it's just
interesting.
It's my jam. So shout out to AL. Anyway, so this is the Somerton Man, and it is an unsolved mystery. It is creepy, and I'm so curious to hear what you think once we go through it.
Okay.
So this starts in Australia in 1948. It is one of Australia's greatest and strangest murder mysteries, probably one of the most famous in the world. And yet a lot of people haven't heard of it. So I will tell you all about it. So we're in 1948, December 1st. Police head to Somerton Park Beach near Glenelg, which is about 11 kilometers or 6.8 miles southwest of Adelaide, South Australia.
Okay.
A body of a man was found lying in the sand by 2 apprentice jockeys who were taking their horses out for some morning exercise. As you do.
You do.
I'm going to send you a few pictures, I'm going to send you the first picture here. God, that scary Peggy thing just reappeared in my
Sorry. This is so exciting because, what are the odds? The first podcast you would ever listen to, you didn't even know then, but one day you would have a podcast and you'd be teaching your co-host all about it.
Yeah. And you know what? Eventually we met the guys from Astonishing Legends and I almost I was so overwhelmed because I was like,
I
When I was broken, sad, and lonely, I would just listen to this podcast all day long, and I finally got to meet them as a fellow podcaster. It was just so cool.
It was really fun to watch Christine like fangirl because I hadn't it's not I knew who Astonishing Legends was, but I hadn't listened to the show before, and we went to dinner with them, and so I was just seeing them as two people, and I saw Christine just like flustered. I was like, oh
I
my
was
gosh,
freaking
for
out.
once I've got my cool about me, and Christine is like the antsy one.
It was so funny. I even wore, this is so nerdy. I wore a watch that I had bought using a promo code of
Yeah.
theirs, like from those 2016 episodes. And I had never bought anything from, all right, it was like the first time I ever bought anything off a podcast was from there. So I wore that watch to the dinner. Anyway, it was super dorky, but
Oh my gosh. No, it was very fun. They're also, in case people are wondering, they're very wonderful people.
they're lovely. I mean, and one time I accidentally butt dialed them, but we'll get into that another day.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. But anyway, I've got this picture. You said there were two jockeys just horsing around.
horsing around, and they've discovered this body. So I just sent you a picture
Okay.
of the body. This is
Yeah.
how it was discovered. It's kind of a dude propped up a little bit on some rocks. He's a little bit tilted, and
He doesn't
he's
look
dead.
he doesn't look dead. He
He
looks
looks
like
like he could
he's
be
he
sleeping,
looks
right?
like he looks like a dude who ran off from a wedding and is napping on the beach.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. Okay,
Like
and so
he got a little drunk at the reception because
I'm so glad you said that.
he
Yes.
looks fancy schmancy and he's just casually leaning up on the rocks.
Yes, he is dressed well, he's clean, and he's just kind of looks like he's sleeping. So they see this guy, they go over there like, "Uh-oh, this dude is dead." And they call the police who show up to see the body. His fa- so his He's lying face up, resting against the seawall. His legs are extended, his feet, one of his feet is kind of up, and it was first thought that maybe he died while sleeping.
Mhm.
So the police observed the man to be well built, clean shaven, and nicely dressed in a fashionable gray or brown double breasted suit, a white shirt, brown trousers, and a sort of red, white, and blue tie. However, he did have no hat on, which in 1948 was extremely unusual because if you were dressed this way, you would be wearing a hat. It was just part of your ensemble. So
Interesting.
it was odd that he was not wearing a hat. I mean, I guess presumably it could have blown away if he's laying there on the beach. I don't know.
Sure.
But he had no real belongings on him. He had no ID. He didn't have a wallet. He didn't even have any cash, which was unusual as well. And all the tags of his clothing had been removed. And they hadn't
Mm.
been ripped out. They had been carefully cut out of the clothes.
But that's interesting that that was even considered evidence because, like, I feel like a lot of people cut tags out of their clothes.
Yeah, well, I was going to say this later, but I'll say it now because it's relevant. But back then, a lot of people labeled their clothing. Like it was just normal to have your name in your clothing.
Oh, I see. Oh, so like, right, he wrote his name on the tag or something.
So all the tags were taken out of the clothing. And I don't think it was old. I don't think it's like modern day tags where it says like Hanes and has like medium or whatever on it. It was like
Oh, like people would
clothing
write.
would be labeled with your name, like say inside a jacket pocket, or
Oh,
your
like
clothes
you
would
would
be
like
labeled.
you would stitch like like a piece of fabric with your name on it into the jacket so
I
people
think it
knew
would
it
just
was your
come that
jacket.
way. I'm not really sure. I don't know if
Huh.
you would. I don't quite know, but I do know it was pretty normal to have your clothes because people didn't have that many clothes. And so, your set of clothes would just be labeled with your name. And if you got them dry cleaned, they'd have your name on them. It just was
Interesting.
normal. And I don't know. I still think it's odd though to have all your tags taken out. Like, don't you? Or do you do that? I don't take my tags off my clothes.
Oh, I take all my tags off.
Really?
Hmm.
Oh, huh. Maybe I'm just weird.
So if I go missing, that's like tell the police to ignore that part. Like I did that. That was me. I did that.
That was M. Yeah, so all the tags of his clothes had been removed and they hadn't just been ripped out, they'd been carefully cut. So a search of his pockets revealed an unused second-class rail ticket from Adelaide to Henley Beach, a bus ticket from the city, a US manufactured narrow aluminum comb, or I guess they say aluminium there, a half empty packet of juicy fruit chewing gum.
Hmm.
And this was an interesting tidbit because, fun fact, Juicy Fruit was A, an American brand, although it was available in Australia, and B, it was widely known as being specifically for children. So at the
Oh.
time, it was not something you would find on a grown man. So just a little
Okay.
odd. I guess it's like zebra stripe gum. If you found like a businessman with like zebra stripe gum, which
Again, tell the cops to
yeah,
ignore that part because
it's
like
normal.
I would have glow in the dark bubble tape on me.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah. Your murder case would be slightly different
if
than
all of
the
a sudden
average.
if they were to show up and like I look like well suited and I have like some Altoids on me, call the police.
And
Like
all your
that's
shirts say like Hanes. I'd be like, uh-oh, something's wrong.
like that's not their shirt. That's not their shirt.
Altoids. Yeah. So so at the time it was just not a thing that you would really find on a grown-ass man. It just was not. And
Okay.
so that was odd. And he also had an Army Club cigarette packet. And that was a common British brand of cigarettes that, like, a lot of times Army guys would have these Army cigarettes. They were like pretty cheap. But inside were Scottish cigarettes called Kensitas, and they were pretty expensive. So he had this like cheap box of cigarettes, but then the cigarettes inside were pricier,
Oh,
which is
okay.
odd because you usually see the opposite of like if someone were trying to like look impressive, they might
Right.
put cheap cigarettes in like an expensive box.
See, I would do the opposite where again, wow, I'm the exact opposite of this
Maybe you're
person.
going to solve this goddamn case and we're just going to be blown out of the water here today.
Maybe this guy just has my insane mind, but like I would think, oh, I'm going to put them in shitty packaging so nobody tries to steal.
I guess, but I think everyone had cigarettes back then. I don't think it was really a.
I guess so, but if they were quality cigarettes and I didn't want to share, it's like if you go into a math class and you've got gum, put it in like a pencil box because no
Okay,
one's going to ask then,
fair
you
point.
know? Okay.
Especially if it's glow in the dark bubble
Especially
tape.
if it's bubble tape. If it's the sour apple one, forget
Put it
about
in an
it.
Altoids tin and everyone will leave you alone.
That's what I'm saying. I would put zebra stripes in an Altoid tin and then no one's going to fucking talk to
Okay,
me.
you know what? You're making a fair point. Yes. So I guess it was odd because typically like a middle class, upper middle class dude wouldn't have to be like hiding what cigarettes he uses, tearing his labels off his clothes. It was just fishy, especially because he had
Sure.
no ID, no cash. It's just off. So he also had extensive lividity, which is blood pooling at the back of his head, suggesting that his body had spent some considerable time after dying with his head in a quite different position. So it
Hmm.
seemed as though essentially the body had been put there, like his head had been elsewhere and he had been staged.
Right.
So that's what they gathered from the start. So the body was brought in to be examined by a pathologist named John Burton. I wanted to say Cleland. In Astonishing Legends, they say Cleland, but I'm just going to say Cleland. His observations revealed that the man was of British appearance, aka fair to ginger colored hair, aged 40 to 45, 5'11", and in quote top physical condition.
Okay.
Yeah, he was super fit. So his body, they described it as kind of wedge shaped. So he had like really broad shoulders, a narrow waist, and he also had high calf muscles. And they thought maybe he was a dancer because his calf muscles were so pronounced that they thought maybe he was a dancer. And
Hmm.
his toes were wedge shaped, the way that your feet would become if you were to wear, point shoes or. And people say they explained later like long distance runners sometimes get that as well when you wear constraining shoes for a long period of time. So they noticed
and
that.
so he also like dancers are like their muscle tone is out of sight.
Very
Like I mean
fit.
like
Yeah.
so, and he had the Dorito chip shape.
Yes, he was very small waist, broad shoulders, kind of
Got it.
point like wedge shaped feet, just very, it seemed like an odd and very specific kind of muscle composition.
Yeah.
So they definitely noticed that. And he also had some interesting genetic physical anomalies. So this definitely
Hmm.
comes back later. So this is something I guess that happens in 2% of people in the population, in the at least the European American population, that his incisor teeth were missing, so that these canine teeth right here are next to your
Yeah.
front teeth.
Oh, weird.
So it's almost like, and some people have it, like we've definitely all seen it, but it's just, you almost have just sharper looking teeth in front because your incisors
So
are
you look like a
closer.
vampire.
You look like a shark or a vampire.
Okay.
I don't think it, I mean, I think it's kind of a cool look. If you have that,
I
good
can't
on you.
I can't imagine it. I don't think I've seen anybody with that before, but
Let
that's
me
cool.
show you. I actually had a picture as well of that to kind of explain it, because it's like you see it and you're like, oh, okay. Like it's not a wildly strange thing. It's just one of those genetic things. Some people don't have those incisors, or don't have the they don't have incisors, so their canine teeth are closer to the front.
You know, it'd be really funny if like your canines and your front teeth were reversed, so you had little pointy
Oh, see,
guys,
that would be
and
more
then like
vampire.
big thick
Okay,
guys.
so look at the guy to the right, and he'll come into play later, but look at the guy to the right, where his teeth are just kind of more, you see what I'm
Oh,
saying?
yeah,
Like, it's
I
not
have seen
super
that
weird
before.
looking or anything. It's like people have it.
I just never even put that
You
together.
wouldn't ever
Okay.
think about it, but it's one of those
Yeah.
things that until you're like counting a corpse's teeth, you're like, oh, odd, he has this condition.
Until that guy says, "I like to suck people's blood and I turn into a bat at night." Then I'd be like, "Oh, the teeth.
Oh,
Oh, I
I
get
get
it.
why you have an accent now and you say
Oh."
aluminum. It makes so much sense. Yeah. So he had
Okay,
that
sorry.
condition, which only 2% of the population has, of the, again, your white European, not American, white European population. So it was just one of those anomalies that they noticed when they were looking at the body. And he also had a very rare anatomical feature relating to his ears, where there was like an indent, or the canal, there was like an extra fold, or I don't totally know how it works, but he had an anomaly in his teeth and his ears that were both pretty rare. So
Oh.
just, something to note when they're trying to figure out who the hell this guy is.
Mhm.
So his hands and nails showed no signs of manual labor. And Cleland also noticed that the man's shoes were squeaky clean, so much so that he observed them to have been recently polished, which led him to
Mm.
believe that the man had not been just wandering around the beach the day before his death.
Right.
So he was found like on the rocks at the beach, but his shoes were so clean that they were like, that's odd. It doesn't look like he was just wandering aimlessly. His
Right.
shoes weren't scratched up. So the doctor who carried out the postmortem believed the man had died from heart failure brought on by poisoning at first, but there was no evidence that he had been poisoned. There was no vomiting. There were no convulsions. Astonishing Legends made sure to mention there was no diarrhea, which are very common when you're poisoned. I mean, that your body has kind of fits or a physical reaction. So
Sure.
none of that had happened. So they said maybe it was poison, but there really was no evidence to say why. They did discover that the man's last meal was a pasty, and
Huh.
I'm only learning what this is because, oddly enough, next week Beach Too Sandy is covering pasties in
Well,
Michigan.
get out of town.
I
Perfect.
know, and I was like, I learned how to say it because I used to say pasty. My brother
That's
said
what
it's
I would
pronounced pasty.
I had no idea until this moment that that's how you pronounced it.
That's
Cool.
that's how I learned literally 24 hours ago. So, fun fact. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what someone in Michigan told me. So, blame
Preferably
them.
before Beach Too Sandy airs.
Yes, oh God, please, yes, please. This pasty he had eaten, which is basically like a British pastry, is what at least I've
Mhm.
been told is what it is. It was eaten 3 to 4 hours before his death, and further tests didn't pick up any signs or traces of poison in that food or in his body at all. Finally, they took his dental records, but they were not able to match them to any known person.
Okay.
So that is kind of where they started to hit the first dead end. And while the autopsy was being completed, witnesses began to come forward. A few said that on the evening of November 30th, which was the night before the body had been found dead, they had seen an individual resembling the dead man lying on his back in the same spot and position where the corpse had been found. And another couple claimed to have seen him that same night around 7 p.m. and noted that they saw him extend his right arm to its fullest extent and then drop it limply, almost as if he were like reaching
Huh.
up and then like it fell back down.
Right.
Another couple alleged to see him from 7:30 between 7:30 and 8 that same night, and they said they did not see him move during the half hour, although they did notice that his position had changed. So they said when they saw him, he was sitting differently or laying differently, which was also kind of
Oh.
odd.
Okay.
And pretty much all of these people, so they also noticed he wasn't reacting to mosquitoes, and they were like, it was like first day of summer,
Get it together.
right, come on, dude. It was,
Yeah.
summertime, December in Australia. And so they're like, yeah, we noticed he wasn't like moving, he wasn't reacting to mosquitoes. But pretty much everybody just kind of thought he was drunk and just laying on the beach. Like you saw the photo, it looks like he's just kind of lounging. So
Yeah.
they were like, oh, he'll sleep it off, whatever. So one of the witnesses told police she observed another man looking down at the sleeping man from the top of the steps that led to the beach. But again, that could just be some guy walking by and like staring at him. I don't think that's necessarily ominous. And it would only be in 1959, which was 11 years later, that another witness would come forward to report that he and 3 others had seen a well-dressed man carrying another man on his shoulders along Somerton Park Beach the night before the body was found. And that
Hmm.
would align with the polished shoes that Cleland had seen, saying he didn't
Right.
walk in the sand. Which at first I saw he was carrying a man on his shoulders, and I thought it meant like piggyback ride, but I think it meant like a carry over the shoulder, you know? Um,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
so
Like a fireman carry.
a fire person, a firefighter carry, but yes.
Firefighter carries. My bad.
No, but yeah, I think that's more what they meant, not like he was on a piggyback ride, which is like I was like, oh, that's cute. Oh no, never mind, it's really not.
That would have been precious. They were just playing
Yeah,
chicken by themselves. They were just
not in the water.
right.
By themselves. Yeah, the best way to play. So the investigation into the mystery continued. The ticket clerk and bus conductor who issued the tickets that they found in his pocket couldn't remember him. They didn't know who he was. And according to South Australian state records, back at the inquest, the team was unable to pin down a cause of death, but they kind of just went with poisoning because they couldn't figure out what else it could have been. And I also want to point out the cigarettes were never tested for poison. And one of the things they mentioned on Astonishing Legends too was like maybe somebody gave him these cigarettes and that's why they were like the wrong cigarettes in a different pack.
Ah,
And maybe they were
yeah.
poisoned. And no one tested those. But again, his body also didn't show traces of poison. So who knows? It would have had to been
Okay.
a very like non-detectable poison. Now, the deputy government analyst R.J. Cohen went on to say he didn't know of poisons which can cause death but decompose in the body so they are not discernible on analysis. So he was like, I don't know what poison would be able to kill him, and then we wouldn't be able to find it. He
Right.
said, I feel quite satisfied that if death were caused by any common poison, my examination would have revealed its nature. If he did die from poison, I think it would be a very rare poison. So it's
Hmm.
possible, but they're kind of leaning, or he's kind of leaning away from it being poison. So at this point, the case went cold for a few months. They didn't have much to kind of go on. Everything kind of seemed to lead to a dead end until January 1949, when an abandoned suitcase was found at the Adelaide
Wait,
railway
what'd you
station.
say? January 19th?
1949.
I think that's the same day as the Helen Duncan raid.
Oh, wait, it wasn't the night. It was just January of 1949. But
Yeah.
you mean the same
January.
month
Oh, I see what you're saying. Sorry, yes, it was the same month and year. But
and
anyway,
year?
that yeah.
Oh, that's weird.
I'm pretty sure. Anyway, I just heard that and I was like, why did that just trigger me?
What a
Sorry.
mysterious time in the
What a
world that day was.
crazy 30 days.
What on earth? Yeah, that month must have been something else. Maybe some planets weren't aligned. I'm not sure.
Anyway,
But
sorry about that.
no, you're good. That's kind of creepy. But yeah, January of 1949, an abandoned suitcase was found at the Adelaide railway station, and it was believed to have belonged to the Somerton Man, aka they call him that because he was found on Somerton Beach.
Got it.
So this suitcase had been checked into the station at 11 a.m. the day before the Somerton Man had been discovered on the beach, and it contained the following items. So I'm going to read you what they found in the suitcase. This is a list from Wikipedia, and I've kind of added some notes to some of it. But
Hmm.
they found a dressing gown and cord, a laundry bag with the name Keane written on it, Keane, a pair of scissors in a sheath that had been sharpened to a point, a knife in a sheath that was sort of a table knife, but had also been sharpened into a really sharp point,
Hmm.
one stencil brush, two singlets, which are like men's undershirts at the time, two pairs of underpants, a pair of trousers with like dry cleaning tags on them, and a sixpence coin in the pocket, a sports coat, a
Okay.
coat shirt, a pair of pajamas, a yellow coat shirt, a singlet with the name cut out of it, a
Hmm.
shirt without, so like, it'd be like part of the shirt. So it was sort of like someone was cutting out the fabric of the clothing. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. Yeah.
So,
Huh.
six handkerchiefs, eight large envelopes, one small envelope, two coat hangers, one razor strap, one cigarette lighter, one razor, one shaving brush, a small screwdriver, and the researcher Abbott that I'll mention later that was interviewed on Astonishing Legends said it was an electrician's screwdriver specifically.
Huh.
one toothbrush, toothpaste, one glass dish, one soap dish containing a hairpin, which was kind of notable because it was typically an item used by women back then to have a hairpin. So that was odd. 3 safety pins, one front and back collar stud, one brown button, one teaspoon, one broken pair of scissors. This is starting to sound like Ariel's like
I was
collection
gonna say
underwater.
this sounds like just this, like, I guess not the weirdest assortment, but quite a lengthy list.
Quite a bizarre like collection. Yeah, it's like she's brushing her hair with a fork or whatever. He like has a random hairpin and some broken scissors. They found a card, like a packer card of tan thread, and this linen thread that was in the suitcase was microscopically later matched with a thread that used to sew the buttons on his clothes that he was wearing when he died. So that's kind of how they were
Wow.
like, this is his suitcase, because they weren't positive at first, but the thread was pretty unusual, and so they were like, we're pretty sure this is his suitcase because it
Right.
matches.
Okay.
They also found a tin of tan boot polish, 2 airmail stickers, which suggests he was sending international mail, a scarf, a towel, and an unspecified number of pencils. So
How big was this fucking suitcase?
I was
And
thinking
this was a time when like suitcases didn't have wheels, right?
yeah, true. You have
No
to
wonder
carry
he
it.
was so fucking fit. He just had to carry this goddamn suitcase everywhere.
Okay, but so I thought the same thing, but then I was like, half of these are like a button, 2 buttons.
Okay,
like,
you're right. A
but no, but
teaspoon.
because the list just goes on and on. But like, stickers, a teaspoon, a button. But it does sound like a shit ton of stuff. It sounds like my purse, honestly. Like if I
Yeah,
were to dump my purse
he
out.
was there to stay. Like that was not like a weekend trip. Like he had a towel, you know.
So he did have a towel, but they did actually say since he only had like 2 or 3 shirts, they were saying it looked like it was a short weekend getaway is what
He's
they
just
kind of,
an over-prepared packer.
I guess, but not even with like the normal things like clothes and shoes, because there weren't even shoes in there. There weren't even clothes. It was like
Scissors.
broken scissors, and I guess he had a shaving brush, but a scarf. I mean, yeah, it was all kind of random stuff, but I don't think it was like a lot of, like, he only had 2 pairs of underpants, 2 pairs of pants.
Okay.
It looked like he only had a couple outfits prepared. So they were like, it didn't seem like a long journey. Like he didn't have a whole slew of suitcases. Like, I don't know, I guess.
He just had like probably only a couple clothes, and then realistically most of that stuff you named was in like one toiletry bag.
It could have just been like scattered throughout in the bottom.
That feels like
a clue all of a sudden.
That feels like it would be like if Christine's bag was found, it'd be
Okay.
like broken scissors.
I was about to say
half of her social security card.
If I get murdered and they say, wow, we found the strangest items in her bag, there's like a can of paint, and like be like, no, that's just her normal.
I would literally have to like walk into the precinct to be like, let me see the bag. And I'd be like, nope. That's
if it
none
was
of that's
clean
important.
and organized, be like, something terribly wrong has happened here. I used to do a game with my friends. They'd be like, we're bored, play what's in Christine's purse. And I would pull out like the most random item I could find. And it would, I mean, truly.
You would be perfect for Let's Make a Deal then, because don't they do that thing in between the breaks where like
I was
they
too
like
scared because I was like, there's so much weird shit in here that like I don't want anyone to on TV to see what's in here. Like it was
I feel
so
like
weird.
I remember you having the confidence that you could have played it though, because
I was like, fucking I could blow all these people out of the water.
For those who don't know, during the commercial breaks of Let's Make a Deal, they have like these games to keep the actual people in the audience entertained, and one of them is like you have to like Wayne Brady will guess 3 random fucking things, and like whoever has all of them in their purse wins.
Yeah.
It sounds like you would have had, like with us, it was like a dice and a hairbrush and then like a baseball card or something, and like someone actually had all of those things, and it was basically you, I guess.
It must have been me, because I mean the other day I found like a miniature rubber duck, and I was like, I don't know why this isn't here, but I mean really like the strangest items. I never know what's in there. Blaze,
I literally just mailed you a bunch of shit from one of your old purses.
Oh, is that what that was?
Did you wonder what all that
I was
was?
like, what is this weird? I mean, I knew it was from my old house, but I was like, where did all this stuff come from?
I was at the And That's Why We Drink apartment. There was like a bunch of random stuff at the bottom of a box, and I was like, I know this is Christine's purse was upside down and content spilled out.
Oopsies.
And so I was like, I'm just gonna mail all this to her at one point. So I just sent Christine like a package of like keys and like
there was like
gift cards.
there was weird gift cards and pins, and like there was a remote for a fan that I never owned. I was like, why do I have a remote for a fan that I don't own? I don't own a fan, whatever. Anyway.
I didn't know what you need. There was literally a locked padlock without the key.
Oh yeah, there's a lock padlock. I don't know where that's from.
It's just suck. It's just not usable anymore. But I was like, I don't know what of this Christine is missing, so just take all of it.
This is why Blaze drinks, because I'm like, oh, I have a pen, and he's like, no, please
A
let me
working pen, Christine.
Yeah, I'd rather go buy a pen than wait for the next half hour while you like dig through your bag for a pen. Okay, so sorry. So this is what's happening in his bag. That's probably why I got defensive when you were like, wow, that's a lot of stuff. I was like, no, it's not. It's all very normal amount of stuff.
His friends also mail him back his locked padlocks too.
Maybe that's what it was, all those airmail stickers. So, like I said, they had found a laundry bag with the name Keen written on it. They also found a tie marked with the letter T, as in like an initial T period, Keen, spelled the same way. And then they found one of the undershirts had the name Keen without an E on the end of it.
Oh.
So they were like, well, maybe that's his name. But also, you know, one of the theories is, well, why would that be? Why would he have left all those in and cut out every other name tag? So the thought was some of the theories are either that he had cut out his own name from all the shirts, and that wasn't his name, and he had got it from like a secondhand store or a thrift store and didn't bother cutting the names out because it wasn't his real name, or that somebody else had cut the tags out to cover up his identity after he was murdered, and also didn't feel like cutting out the extra 3 items that didn't have his name on it. So those are the theories. They also searched for the name Keen in the database, and there was not anybody missing with that name. So they kind of quickly determined they don't think that's his name.
Okay.
So they have a suitcase now, and they think they're kind of like they found everything they could. But no, months later, police discover a secret pocket in the man's pants.
Oh my gosh.
Now, it wasn't really a secret pocket. It was like a pocket watch pocket, which is kind of what in your jeans where you have that little mini pocket.
The tiny one, yeah.
The teeny one. So it wasn't necessarily a secret pocket, but it was like what was in it was so well hidden that they hadn't seen it right away. And it was a piece of paper, and it was rolled up really tightly and then stuffed all the way into the bottom of this little tiny pocket. Ooh, I just love this part because it's like,
what?
Oh my God,
oh my gosh,
another
what does
clue.
It say?
Okay, so they pull it out and they unfold it to find the words Tamam Shud. Now, let me spell that for you.
What?
I'm not satisfied with that.
Are you here? Hang on.
So it's spelled Tamam space Shud, and it's Persian.
Okay.
And it's Tamam Shud, and that's actually that's the alternate name of the case. Sometimes it's called Somerton Man most often, but sometimes it's also called the Tamam Shud case.
Got it.
So they find this printed on it, and with further investigation, the police discover that Tamam Shud is a Persian phrase where tamam is a noun that means the end, and shud, S-H-U-D, indicates past tense. So Tamam Shud means ended or finished.
Okay.
So notably, this phrase appears at the end of the 11th century book of Persian poems by Omar Khayyam called the Rubaiyat. So there's this book of poems called the Rubaiyat, and it was written by Omar Khayyam, and the last page features that phrase, Tamam Shud, sort of like the end.
Okay. Sure.
So in the following weeks, police were like, hey, anybody have this book? We're trying to figure out what the hell this ripped out, piece of paper comes from.
Yeah.
And amazingly, they couldn't believe their luck when a local businessman came forward and said, I think I have the book you're talking about, and I don't know why. And they're like, what do you mean? And he said, I've been driving my truck around, I've been driving my car around, and one day I noticed this book in the back seat. I thought it was my brother's. My brother thought it was mine. So he didn't think much about it. And then when he saw that they were making a call for this copy of this book, he was like, oh God, that's the book in the backseat of my car. And it was the copy of the Rubaiyat. And
Huh.
it had a missing last page. It had been torn out where the phrase
Stop.
Tamam Shud would have been. And
Goose can.
I know, it's so creepy. And so they
So
determined.
wait, how were so sorry, how were these brothers related to him? Like how would that guy's book have gotten in this guy's
So
car?
what they determined is that since nobody really locked their doors or they would just have their windows rolled down, that someone just tossed it in the back seat. There was like no
Just getting rid of
connection.
evidence.
Just he was like, none of us have ever seen this book before. We just assumed it was like somebody else's in the family, and nobody even noticed it for like months or weeks or whatever, until we were like, oh, this is what they're looking for.
Weird.
So there was not even a real connection. It just happened to be that they were driving around with this book in the backseat. Someone had just tossed it in. So just another odd. I mean, thank God this guy found it, I guess. So he tells him he has this copy, and when police look at the back of the book, they find this final page, and where the words Tamam Shud should have been, they had been ripped out. And at first they were like, they weren't sure if it could match up, but they had it forensically examined and it was a perfect match. So it had been torn from that page. Even more creepily, spookily, scribbled on the back cover of the book, they find a coded message.
Oh my
And now I'm
God.
going to send you the message because it is just something I can't even begin to explain to you. I mean, I'll read it out loud for the audience, but I'm going to text it to you anyway because
Okay.
it's just so weird looking. Oh, okay. It kind of.
Oh, good night. I get it. I get it.
It changed the formatting, but all those mixed up letters are kind of what the lines were. So, like, for example, the first line says WRGOABABD, and then the second line is MLIAOI, and then there's like a line through it. So just picture that for 5 lines, and it's just odd. And
weird. Yeah, it's
so
just a random assortment of letters.
yes, so it looks like some sort of code or cryptic or whatever you want to call it, and they find this in the back of the book. So this is like another clue to this mystery as to who this person could be. And alongside the clue or the message was a phone number, was a local phone number. And so they look at the lines. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the lines that they find there. There's a debate as to whether, oh, you know what? Actually, why did I send you that? I have the actual picture of the code, which is way creepier.
That'd have been useful.
Silly me. Here it is.
Silly goose, Christine.
This is way creepier. So this is it written out.
Oh, good night. It really is so much scarier all of a sudden.
Right?
Well, it's not an Apple text font. It is a lot creepier.
When it's not in a blue bubble with a smiley face at the end of it. Yeah. It's just a picture. It's just, maybe
there's not like 10 eggplant emojis underneath.
M can't read it if there's not 10 eggplant emojis. We could probably put this in like a Instagram series of photos because they are so creepy just to have them all in one place. But yeah, so it's this creepy code, and like I'll tell you a little bit about them. So there's a debate as to whether the first letter is a W or an M, because you can kind of see it could be either one. Yeah. There's also a struck out line after the first one, and it's considered significant because it's pretty much the same line as the fourth line, or at least starts the same. And so they think that someone made a mistake, crossed it out, and wrote it further down.
I see.
And in the third line, there's a dot in the A and a dot under the T. In the fourth line, there's a dot near the first A. And in the fifth line, there's a dot above the S, a line through the M, and a line through the S. So just like strange, puzzling assortment of letters. And nobody has ever been able to crack this or figure out what this is, ever. Computers, software has tried, code cracking software has tried, police have tried, investigators have tried, armchair detectives have tried. It is as mysterious as it was the day they found it. However, there are a few people who believe they have an idea as to what it says. So some people, including the folks at ciphermysteries.com, believe it's more likely to be an acrostic rather than a secret code. So if you can remember from like elementary school where you would write like your name, and then you would write like you would write it vertically, and then you write C is for corny, or I was gonna say cool, but that was wrong. So C for Clueless. H
Christine?
for what?
C for Christine?
No, that's what my name would be, Christine. Okay, sorry. So it would
Oh, I
say
get what you're
like
saying. But it would be
EM.
like different. It would be like different adjectives that have to
Yes,
go with
exactly.
your name. Uh-huh.
Exactly. Or like, you could do Christine, crossing every line. H.
Uh-huh.
Uh whatever. You could play
Like
this game.
different attributes per letter or
Yes,
something.
or like a poem or like some sort of whatever. And so they
Yeah.
believe that's more what it was. Like he's trying to remember something, like maybe a mnemonic device to memorize something. So
Mm.
that's what a lot of people believe. Because I guess the way that code stuff is its own whole field, obviously, but apparently the letter frequencies are more similar to the letter frequencies of the first letters of English words. And so they looked at it and they're like, this looks more like a bunch of first letters of a bunch of different words that he was trying to
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
Like Roy G. Biv,
Right.
So they thought maybe that's what it is. A few people have tried to, on Reddit say they think they know what it is. So I'll take that with a grain of salt, but here's some suggestions. So a user named X Friday said they think the final line is, quote, "I think they might think something about me. Send the guys." So
Ooh.
that's one option, very creepy. But then you kind of hear the next one, and you're like, wait, how are they even getting to this? Because user Scout483 says, "My rose grows old and by decays, most threadbare in my penitence, and ne'er enough to pay. My life is all but over, and I am quite content. I'll take the moon, the stars, and my soul to grovel and repent." So those are
Wow.
two
So
options of what it could say.
whoa. It's
So
really
it's
running the gamut
running the gamut.
on
Indeed.
really any just put any word anywhere and it could fit.
I think it says Christine is cool and hot.
and and
Radiant.
really into some tasty igloos. Not M.
Not I was like, you're stuck. Oh no, you're not stuck. Okay. That was pretty good, Em. That was pretty
Thank
excellent.
you.
I'm actually quite
Thank you.
impressed.
I mean, I'm
That
pretty good at my alphabet,
but
so
like no, you brag about it, man. Own it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting though, because if it is some sort of like cipher like that, or like his own personal thing, no one's ever going to be able to crack it because it was just something he had in his head that he wrote down that isn't actually a code. You know what I mean? So it could
Mhm.
very well just be like a grocery list. Some people thought maybe he just wanted to write
Right.
down a list. It's like his own shorthand, and he wanted to write a list of what he needed
Or
to pick up.
this person could also be wildly unstable and like whatever is written down here, like whatever the list is. Like I used to make lists for fun that made no fucking sense. Like it might just be a list of like his favorite cereal mascots in order, like
It could literally be something so non-pertinent, right, to the case, and could just be his own shorthand. They did say they don't believe code, like professional code crackers have said they don't believe it's gibberish. Like they do believe it does stand for
Mm,
something because the way it's structured has like some sort of relevance to the English language. I don't know how they do it, but apparently they have kind of said they don't think it's gibberish, but
okay.
it could very well be a list of his favorite cereal mascots. Like it could be something that only mattered to him and that we wouldn't even be able to read.
Right.
So it's kind of a mystery, but it's very creepy because it's written in the back of this book. On Astonishing Legends, they also had a code breaker lady that they interviewed, and she was super cool and fascinating. And she explained that there was this thing around this time where like Soviet spies would use one-time, what were they called? Like basically one-time sheets where you could only use this code once and then you had to destroy it so that nobody could ever pick up on a pattern.
Okay.
So she said maybe, the book was the code and you were supposed to go to a certain line of the book and of the Tamam
Oh,
Shud and relate and then never
I
use it
see.
again. So that was one thing she kind of threw out there that I thought was interesting, especially because that was commonly done back then. So that's possible. And
Also, this was right around this was at the end of the 40s. This was only a few years after like World War II, right? So like maybe this was
exactly.
someone who was like in coding or do some
So
sort of
that's exactly where I was about to go, which is that we are in post World War II. Cold War is ramping up. We are getting into all sorts of spy territory, all sorts of wild stuff going on that was real. That wasn't just fictional spy stuff, like it actually happened. And some of it's
right.
crazier than we could ever believe. So that definitely becomes part of it, especially when they're looking at it and going like, okay, he has all his clothes labels torn out. He has a secret code in his pocket. He's dead mysteriously on the beach. Like, I mean, it really sounds like some sort of novel, like spy novel.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's see. So in a 2004 Sunday Mail article, a retired detective named Jerry Feltis, who had become obsessed with the case himself, took the letters in it, ITTMTSAMSTGAB, and he believed that it could stand for the following. It's time to move to South Australia, Mosley Street. So remember that. So that's what
Okay.
he kind of, for whatever reason, retired detective, went way deep in this case, and he believes that's what it stands for. So they didn't have many leads with this code, obviously, but they did have a lead with the telephone number. So there was a phone number written, a local number. And in fact, it directed police to the doorstep of a young nurse named Jo Thompson, who lived 400 meters away from the crime scene on a street called Mosley Street.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So by this point, they had already buried the Somerton Man. They had done every test they could think of. And also, I just want to point out too, I'm going to send you a picture of if you are okay with it, I'm going to send you a picture of the photo of him after being embalmed, like in his
Oh,
casket,
good night.
basically.
Sure.
It's
Okay.
just a photo of, it's
Thank
the
you
one
for the preparation.
I wanted to warn you,
Oh,
but it's
that's
just a
fine.
photo of like him dead,
Yeah,
basically.
okay. I was expecting like
It's
something much
nothing.
more drastic. Okay.
No. It's nothing horrible. But I send that to you because, and then I want to send you a picture of what they think he actually looked like. Because so this photo I just sent you is a photo of him months after he had died and had already been embalmed and had been frozen. So
Okay.
essentially I'm saying that because that photo that I just sent you is the most commonly associated, like the most famous associated, but it looks nothing like him. So if you were to know him in real life, you wouldn't maybe even recognize this guy if you saw him in this state. So here's a picture of what they believe he actually looked like, in his tie and everything on
Okay.
the left there.
Uh-huh. Oh, he's a sharp looking dude.
Right? So yeah, he looks completely different, I think, in the rendering of him alive, based on how they found him on the beach versus after months of being in a freezer and decomposing, essentially.
I guess it's weird because it looks, if I'm looking for the similarities, he looks very similar to that guy, but if I'm looking for
Yes.
the differences, he looks so different.
Yes, I think it's more like if you knew him like in your life, you probably would be like, "Oh, I know that guy." But I think if you saw him in passing or like he was a customer of yours at a cafe or something and you saw him briefly, you might not recognize the
Right.
decomp photo, but you might be like, "Oh, that's the guy, the sharp looking dude I saw at the hotel," or whatever it may be. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, it's kind of, they just look different. I mean, I'm
I
sure like
mean,
if you knew him,
I'm also totally like projecting my own like hopes and desires on this, but he looks like a spy from the 40s. Like
doesn't he?
he looks, I mean, he just looks like a normal dude, but like now that I'm primed to think of him as that, he looks like a
Yeah,
fucking spy from the
it's kind of
40s.
weird. I mean, he had a code in his like hidden in his pocket. He had all of his name
He's
tags ripped out, no ID. Like it's sketchy.
Yeah, and he's pretty good looking. He could like get himself into really any
Slick.
scenario he needed. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he's a good looking fella. And so, you know, I, I don't know. It just adds to the mystere, I suppose. But
Mhm.
also, they mentioned on Astonishing Legends, which I Googled later, which is Marilyn Monroe's autopsy photo. And you like really can't, I mean, it looks like a completely different person. It's
Oh,
like
really?
fascinating how, and it's not just because she's not like made up and glamorous. It's just like after your body has been completely, in a different state and
Mhm.
decaying and, embalmed, you look different. So essentially that's all the only point I wanted to make here is that
Sure.
even then they were like sharing this other photo and people may have been like, I don't recognize him, but they didn't know
Mhm.
what he looked like in real life. So anyway, they find this woman named Jo Thompson. She's a nurse and she only lives 400 meters away from the crime scene.
On Mosley Street.
On Mosley Street, exactly. And so they had buried the Somerton Man, but they had hired a, I guess, taxidermist to make a plaster cast of him to kind of keep his form for after he's buried, so that they had like a rendering of what he looked like.
Sure.
Like a physical rendering of what he looked like. And when police roll up at the nurse's house, they show her a picture of the body and ask her to identify it. She denies knowing the man, but when they show her the plaster cast, she apparently looked so completely taken aback to the point of giving the appearance that she was about to faint. And a detective had to stand behind her because they really thought she was going to pass out. But she continued to deny knowing this guy, but she started like fully freaking out. And they were like,
okay.
Fishy. She knows something. So they definitely got the impression she knew more. So they kind of like kept on her. And eventually she admitted to once owning a copy of the Tamam Shud, the Rubaiyat, where the Tamam Shud phrase came from. But she said she had given her copy away to a guy named Alfred Boxall in 1944. And they were like, well, maybe Alfred Boxall is the guy. And so they tried to track him down. No such luck. He's alive and well, living in Sydney. He is not the Somerton Man. So another strange dead end. But also they're like, okay, so she owned a copy of this book. She clearly almost passed out when she saw his physical likeness. And she lives 400 meters away from the crime scene. Something fishy is going on here. So with little evidence, no suspects, no clear motive, the police kind of let the case go cold, and ultimately they call it a suicide. They're like, well, we don't really have anything to go on, so we're going to call it a suicide. Something odd was that Jo Thompson at this point asks for her name to be removed from the case file. She said she doesn't want her name in it. She doesn't want to be associated, and they take her name out. So
that's also fishy,
right?
I feel like that's not something that investigators should condone.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, is she allowed to just say, I don't want to put my name in here? I don't know.
Yeah, like, can you imagine like stumbling upon like a murder and then being like, can you like just jot out that I was ever here? Like,
actually,
no.
Can you tell them I was somewhere else? Like, yeah, it's
just use some whiteout. Just clear my name.
Yeah, literally clear it, because it seems anti what they should be doing. But they took her wishes to heart and they took her name out.
Okay.
But she doesn't disappear from this story, so don't worry. So now we fast forward to 2007. So we are...
Whoa. Okay.
We made a big leap. And this has just been an unsolved mystery for decades. And we are now with a scientist who works at the University of Adelaide called Derek Abbott. And he's the one who was interviewed on Astonishing Legends. I did like an hour-and-a-half interview. It was part 3 of their series. And according to a long article about Abbott on CaliforniaSunday.com, he had always been kind of an investigative kid. Having grown up in the UK at 15, he started traveling all over London and researching the history of old lampposts and mailboxes, which I thought was precious.
So pure.
Isn't
like it? You've got nothing else you want to look at. Okay.
It's sweet. It's like, oh, Mom, I found the coolest retro lamppost today from this steel company. I don't know. I just thought it was so bizarre and funny.
I mean, someone's got to care to be able to pass on that information. So,
and you know what? Some steel maker, maybe my dad, maybe not, is somewhere going, wow, a kid is proud of my work and it makes me feel good.
I'm a hero to someone.
I'm a hero. It's not my daughter, who's a podcaster, but it's some child in London, and I'll take it.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
So he was kind of always super into just investigating things around him. He was actually involved in the case of the Snowtown murders, which was episode 212. And so he was already kind of renowned as a smart dude. Let's just put it that way. So I put this later, but I'm just going to tell you now. Hold on. So he isn't just some random dude. I'm saying all this because to give him some credit, he's a physicist with a PhD in electrical and electronic engineering. So he's a smart dude. He's spent a lot of time like helping in unsolved cases, and that kind of thing. He spent a lot of time looking at mailboxes. I don't know, but he's a smart guy. So just to give you some context. So Abbott, In 2007, he becomes obsessed with the case of the Somerton Man, and he goes on Facebook to try and crack the code with other people who are interested in cracking the code. So, thank you, Zuckerberg, I guess, because now there are
Okay.
Facebook groups to crack the codes. And so they're trying to figure out what this code means. And eventually he comes to the conclusion that a lot of other people did, which is that the list is most likely the first letters of words, like a memory aid or a shopping list. So kind of a red herring, I guess, is one way to put it. Like, it doesn't really necessarily apply. But he had already gotten so deep in on this case that he's kept researching it. So he reached out to former Adelaide detective Jerry Feltus, who I mentioned earlier, who had tried to solve the riddle or whatever, and said it meant like go to, what was the name of the street?
Mosley Street.
Mosley Street, thank you.
South Australia, Mosley Street.
Mosley Street, exactly. So he reaches out to that guy who's also obsessed with the case. And he felt
and lampposts. I mean, they just are meant to be.
They were like in a Facebook group with 2 members, and it was just them. Oh, Jerry and Derek are BFFs.
Together, they're Jarek.
Okay, that's sweet. I mean, it's terrible, but it's sweet.
They should go into business as like the Jarek Lamppost Company, the Appreciation Society.
Well, spoiler alert, they are no longer friends. And we'll get to that. But it's kind of their frenemy name, I guess. It could be
Jarek. Ugh, you know.
Derek already has that kind of like Derek name to it, so Jarek is even worse. So he reaches out to Jerry Feltus, and Jerry was a detective with over 40 years of experience in the police, and in the last decade had also been delving into the Somerton Man case himself. He was actually writing a book at this point, which would later be published in 2010, called The Unknown Man, A Suspicious Death at Somerton Beach. So when Abbott got in contact with Feltus, Feltus had already had the actual original piece of paper that was found in the Somerton Man's pocket.
Wow.
So this guy's like been on it for 10 years now. And now Abbott enters the scene and is like, okay, I'm in. I want to do this too. So in 2009, they arranged a meeting where 3 key pieces of information emerged. For one, Feltus told Abbott about the name of the nurse who had tried to take her name out of the case.
Okay.
So luckily, she's back in action here, because Feltus had interviewed her for his book. And it was fortunate he had done that, because by the time Feltus and Abbott met, she had died. So he had information on her that could help Abbott kind of unravel the mystery of who she was. And it was also revealed that this nurse, Jo Thompson, was frequently referred to by, she had a lot of nicknames. Nothing as cool as Hellish Nell, but she had one that she called Jestyn, that she kind of made herself, Jestyn.
I love when people make their own nicknames for themselves.
Don't you?
It's always so entertaining. I'm like, so you got to really have a particular level of confidence to do that.
I mean, that's what I did with Chrissy Kiwi, and it was really some misplaced confidence, because it certainly didn't catch on. But I tried really hard.
It's okay, Chrissy Kiwi. You're doing good.
Man, someday. So the name Jestyn is another name she went by of her own accord. And so after this meeting, Abbott is like, okay, now I know kind of the identity of this person who had been kind of removed from the case records. So he tracks all of Joe's friends, family, acquaintances. And because of these interviews, he begins to get to know Jo Thompson really well, and would later go on to provide California Sunday her life story. So a little bit about Jo. She was born Jessica Harkness in 1921 outside Sydney. She had cut ties with her parents, rarely spoke of them, and she had started dating a car salesman called Prosper Thompson, and had a child named Robin Thompson in 1947.
Okay.
She and Prosper hadn't yet married, because he had recently divorced his first wife, and Australian law had like a cooling off period, basically, where you had to wait a certain amount of time to remarry somebody.
Dope.
So he had to wait. So they weren't married yet when she had their child, but they did get married in 1948. And she worked as a stay-at-home mom for their 2 children through the 50s, and then began work as a nurse.
Okay.
Now, her association with the Somerton Man has led some to hypothesize her potentially being a communist spy master posing as a housewife. This is where shit gets wild. So
Okay.
some people think she was a communist spy and was just the average little housewife and, you know, the perfect cover, I suppose.
Oh yeah.
And interestingly enough, her own, I believe it was her daughter, in an interview on Australian TV, said her mom had once offhandedly said, "Oh, I'm surprised I still remember so much Russian." And her daughter was like, "Russian?" Like it came out of nowhere.
Excuse me? How do you
And it
say
was,
excuse me in Russian? Hang on.
"Excuse me?" I don't know. May excuse you? I don't know.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so that was just like a side comment her daughter had heard, and her daughter believes she was a spy. Her family does believe that. So
Oh my gosh.
interestingly enough, but again, that's, you know, more kind of hearsay, like who knows if that's true or has been embellished at all. But so just to give it kind of a little context. Oh god, I already lost my place. Hang on.
We were speaking Russian actually,
Oh,
so
that's
just
right. I'm in the Russian portion of
right.
my
Yeah.
story.
Go back to like the borscht and like random things like that.
Aw, love a good borscht. Okay. So some people think she was a communist spy,
Mhm.
and her daughter kind of adds to that a little bit. So next, Abbott is like, okay, she had children, so I'm going to try to get in touch with her son, Robin Thompson.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, Abbott was too late because Robin had passed away of cancer on March 19th, 2009. So
Ah,
he had basically just missed him.
yeah.
And he it still is relevant though because he continues to research Robin Thompson, and what he discovers, now this is where goose cam comes in for me. What he
Ugh.
discovers is that from a young age, Robin's mother had taken him to dance classes. He stuck with it and would
Ah.
become a professional ballet dancer in his adulthood. Weird,
So
right?
so this guy could be Robin Thompson.
Well, he is Robin Thompson, but he could be.
Well, the guy on the sand, the guy, the main Somerset guy could be Robin Thompson.
No, Robin Thompson died in 2009.
Oh, right. Duh. Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry, I heard dancer and I got really stoked. I was like, "Oh, it's the guy with the great physique."
No, his son.
Okay.
Okay, are you following now?
I'm following now.
Sorry. So,
Aha.
okay. So,
Sorry, my own brain was on its own trail, per
no, I
usual.
don't mean to take you off your fun trail. I'm so
No,
sorry.
this one's more juicier. So I
This
am
one gets juicy, I gotta say.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So, essentially, he finds this Joe Thompson who's like, nope, never heard of the guy, even though she's fainting when she sees his face. And she has this son named Robin Thompson, who's the guy
Mhm.
she married. But when they look decades later, when this Abbott looks into Robin Thompson, is like, huh, he has this noted ballet career. He also, there's more information here. So he starts thinking of the 1948 coroner notes. Like I said, the Somerton Man had trained, or he had pronounced calf muscles. They were much higher up than a runner or a cycler.
Right.
And because of Robin's acclaim of being a ballet dancer, Abbott was able to find a close-up photo of him in a newspaper. And he would later go on to say to ABC News, lo and behold, I found he has the same strange ear feature as the Somerton Man,
Uh-huh.
which was a little crease on his earlobes. That's what the Somerton Man had. So they had the same strange ear thing. Then he went down a rabbit hole of pictures and found that Robin's smile also shared a genetically inherited trait of the incisor teeth being missing.
Mhm.
And now that photo
Okay.
I showed you that was an example is a picture of Robin. That's a picture of the
Oh.
son uh,
Wow.
that
Oh, well, now let me go back and look again.
Abbott believes is the son of Joe and the Somerton Man.
Mhm. I wanted to see if they looked similar at all.
It's so hard to tell also because, you know,
They both have curly light brown
they do.
hair.
And the ears, look at the ears.
Yeah.
Their ears are really similar.
Wow.
So the teeth, I mean, again, the teeth are a 2% a rarity of 2%. Then
Yeah.
plus the ears, plus the genetic tendency to be dancer,
Yeah.
so very odd. So at this point, Abbott is like down a rabbit hole, but like a cool one. And he is
But a cool one.
sometimes I feel like you can get lost in a rabbit hole that doesn't really yield much. I mean, I do that all the time, but he's down a rabbit hole that's like, oh shit, like I am uncovering something major here. On top of that, the fact that Joe Thompson hadn't been married in 1947 when this
Mhm.
child was born, and that the Somerton man had her phone number and had written it on this piece of
Yeah.
paper in his pocket. And I mean, this is just conjecture, but the potential, saying it's on Mosley Street or where she lived, also, and the fact that she had a copy of this book that she had lost or given away,
Mhm.
also just very suspicious, very sus. I'm so sorry, very sus.
Sus. Yeah, for sure.
So when Astonishing Legends folks talked to Abbott, he said he believed 99.9% that Robin was the Somerton man's son.
I mean,
And
that's some incredible investigative
right?
skills right there. Yeah.
To be able to
Wow.
find, I mean, and the similarities are like striking, just the genetic anomalies, the fact that like you can,
Yeah.
it's pretty wild. I mean,
It
statistically speaking, it's pretty wild.
wow.
So
Well done.
obviously, yeah, he did great. So good job, Abbott. So
Woo!
course, now Abbott begins to research into whether Robin had any children because he's trying to find anybody who can he can talk to. So
Yeah.
this is where it becomes sort of like a soap opera. Okay. So he finds a woman named Rachel Egan. Now, Rachel had been put up for adoption by her parents, Robin and Roma, when she was a baby. And she later said to ABC News, I grew up not knowing I was adopted. However, there were many aspects of me and my adoptive family that were very different. I always had a passion for ballet and dance and theater, and I always wondered where that came from. By
What?
the way, I didn't know being a ballerina or a ballet
Was
dancer was so
genetic.
genetic because now I'm just going to say that's why I'm not really coordinated or good at anything because my genes aren't.
Right. Why do I have such a genetic predisposition to ice cream and
Thanks a lot,
steak?
mom and dad, that you did this
Ugh.
to me and I have no choice in the matter at
Why
all.
couldn't I care about like triathlons?
And
Jesus.
I almost said asparagus, what? Asparagus. I can't even say vegetables right.
Oh my god.
Oh, it's so sad. So she said in her early 20s, Rachel's birth mother, Roma, who was Robin's partner, got in contact with her and revealed that she had been dancing with the Australian ballet in New Zealand when when she met Robin and fell pregnant with Rachel. They had put her up for adoption, seemingly to focus on their dance careers. And after being reconnected, Rachel moved to Brisbane to be closer to her biological mother. So in 2009, Abbott contacts Rachel and is like, I'd love to meet up and discuss the Somerton man who's potentially your bio granddad, that,
Hmm.
this mystery is kind of coming together. So Abbott flew to Brisbane, where, according to Rachel, she collected him from the airport and they spent a few days together looking at photos and sharing information. However, it wasn't just information they shared, because as
Ew.
Rachel would go on to say in a 60 Minutes documentary, it turned out that we'd had a lot of similarities with our upbringings. Like me, he wasn't planned, his parents were quite young, and they were students. And by the end of the weekend, Derek had proposed to her.
Holy shit. Okay.
What?
Wow. Okay.
So now it's Derek Abbott and the Somerton man's potential granddaughter, who he's been researching for all these years. So just a wild turn of events. And everyone was a bit weirded out by this because it's like, wait, you were researching this woman and now
Uh-huh.
you're like marrying her after a weekend? Like, it was just a pretty weird turn of events. So,
That worked real quick. Maybe there was like some quick agreement of like, I can only tell you if we're married.
oh,
He was
there's
like,
like
I'll
that
marry the
double,
shit out of
what's
you.
that thing where you can't testify against your spouse?
Yeah, exactly. It's like maybe he was like, I have been hunting this story for far too long to end now. Like, that's not going to be what
So
stops
I'm
me.
gonna like legally bind myself to you, I guess. So everyone was weirded out, especially Jerry Feltis, of Jarek fame, because
Hmm.
he said, I just couldn't believe it. And I thought, what the hell is going on here? Has this guy married this girl to just try and pursue his DNA subject? And
Truly, that's what I
right?
was like. It's not that far fetched with everything else I'm hearing. So,
With all of the yeah, exactly. So, side note, according to CaliforniaSunday.com, it seems Feltus and Abbott have just developed a lot of beef with one another. So,
uh-huh.
to quote Abbott, he hates my guts about
Oh,
Jerry. And they
okay.
both spend vast amounts of time tracking the same clues, collecting the same Rubaiyat copies to try and, find the one, I guess, that was missing, and scrutinizing the same photos, but they do not speak to each other. And Feltus regards Abbott as a grade A pest and a bane of serious investigators. So
Wow.
they are frenemies, except without the FR part. They're just sorry for Jarek lovers. Sorry for all the Jarek stans who just are not happy right now.
All the Jarek fan fiction out there needs to be put to an end.
Oh, it's really sad. I know. So this is where I was gonna say, just to clarify, Abbott's not just some random dude. Like he literally has a PhD, all this business. So he has some cred. Okay, where credit is due, I want to give it to him. So now Abbott and Rachel are still together. They have 3 children, and
Oh
they're
my
like
God.
happily married. And Abbott says, the fact that my family is now entwined with the Somerton Man makes things perhaps a bit more complicated. But as a scientist, when I do my work and my scientific research, I have to be neutral about things. I have to be dispassionate. Whereas Rachel has said, quote, he wanted to look at my ears and my teeth.
And then he said, I do.
And then I said, I do, for some unexplained reason. She said he wanted to look at my ears and my teeth. He was also after my DNA. It's probably the first request I've had from a man to do that. Anyway, now we're happily married with 3 children. So
how odd to be like,
DNA.
I must know your DNA and also mix it with mine. So now we just carry on this creepy
Now
legacy.
I'm biologically related to the Somerton Man, sort of,
Oh my
or at least my
God.
children are. So pretty wild stuff. Pretty fascinating. Listen, love is blind, love is mysterious. Nobody knows. I don't judge. So this is pretty wild. So the relationship flourished, but the case unfortunately hasn't really made much headway. Derek Abbott's last step has been to seek opportunities to prove that his wife is the Somerton Man's granddaughter through DNA testing. And fortunately, so he's wanted to have the body exhumed, but the Australian government keeps denying it, just because they're like, that's kind of, we try to avoid that, right? Like unless there's
Yeah.
some serious reason. However, he actually was able to find he is sort of a breakthrough. He found the plaster bust that the taxidermist made.
Yeah.
He used the actual body to do that, so that he found 3 hairs of the actual Somerton Man on the bust.
Why doesn't he just trace? Why doesn't he just use DNA? Oh,
he
perfect.
did. So that happened in 2018, I think, or 2017. And so, obviously that takes a while. They did eventually obtain a high definition analysis of the mitochondrial DNA, as you do,
Mm-hmm.
from the hair sample, and they found that he and his mother, so Somerton Man and his mother, belonged to haplogroup H4A1A1A, which is possessed by only 1% of Europeans. But I don't know what that means for the case, really. I mean, maybe it's still going somewhere. I'm not sure. But he was able to find and test those hairs, which I thought was really cool. So
can you imagine if you die and then you're like a random person is so obsessed with your mysterious death that they marry your granddaughter and like
it's true though, it's so weird.
He's probably like, what the fuck is going on down there?
He's probably like, I was just smoking a cigarette and I accidentally got too drunk and fell asleep on the beach, and now everyone's like
people are freaking out.
Yeah, so really odd turn of events. So in kind of a sweet ending, he said he owes a lot to the Somerton Man, and in their household on the walls, you'll find portraits of Joe and the Somerton Man next to one another, because he believes they had a thing, whether it was an affair or like a quick affair, a long affair, one night stand, whatever. It's pretty clear that she was probably impregnated by him, because the statistics of this are just too kind of wild to suggest otherwise. So he says, the Somerton Man has brought me to the place I am today. I have the children I love and might not have existed if it wasn't for him, which technically is true. So
wow.
To this day,
so one day you'll get to say that about like Mothman's grandchild.
The fact that my children have wings is all due to my love for my queer icon, Mothman himself.
If it weren't for my love of Mothman, I wouldn't be where I am today.
I wouldn't have the beautiful and fucked up life that I have, and also no friends left because I got really weird in the last couple of years. Yes, thank you. I'm so glad you finally are just fully understanding my lifestyle. So to this day, the identity of the Somerton Man is a mystery, as is the reason he was on the beach, as is the reason he wound up dead, or even how he wound up dead. There are so many theories that like you have to listen to this podcast if you want to find out all the rabbit holes, because they go down every rabbit hole in Astonishing Legends. Like they will take every little piece. I mean, they interview these guys, like they're so in depth with their research that it's 4 2-hour episodes on just this. So really well done. A lot of rabbit holes. I will tell you the most common theories are that he was a spy. Again, we're post World War II, tensions with Soviet Union, And soon after the Somerton Man's body was found, there would be a crackdown on Soviet espionage in Australia. So this was a thing that was kind of happening in the area.
Mm.
There were also the odd details, like the expensive cigarettes hidden in a cheap box, the tags removed from his clothing, the code on the paper.
Right.
So some people believe he was a spy. Another theory is that the Somerton Man had returned to town. Either he and Joe had a child, or he heard that Joe had fallen pregnant after they had hooked up, and he knew maybe this Robin was his potential son, and he went to town to meet the child or confront her
Wow.
or something like that. I mean, he had his suitcase, he had his train tickets. Maybe he was in town to kind of, I don't know, reunite with her or meet his son. And he may have been either killed or died by suicide. And there is some eyewitness testimony that supports this, saying that a neighbor had seen a strange man banging on Joe's door. And when she didn't answer, he went to a couple neighbors to ask like where she was. So, and it was a guy
Oh,
nobody recognized on Mosley Street. So
wow.
it's potential that he
Whoa.
traveled there and was like, I want to figure out what's going on. I heard she has a child and it could be mine, or, who knows? That's conjecture, but could be. Now, one of the more interesting ones I heard was that it could have had to do with the black market because, during wartime, things were so, like supplies were so hard to get a hold of. It turns out there were taxis. So taxis were used a lot of times in these black market sales. And Joe's husband, Prosper, the father of Robin, on
Mm.
paper at least, was a taxi driver and was known as the man who could get you anything. And some people believe he was a black marketeer, which is what they called a black market racketeer.
Mm.
And this wasn't necessarily like really sinister. It was just like, oh, he would help you get eggs and
Yeah, he's your egg guy. He's your
he's the
bucket
egg
guy. He's your
guy. Or
yeah.
like, extra sanitary napkin, whatever you need. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean sinister. It's just like it was really hard to get supplies
Mhm.
back then, rations and that kind of thing. And there was some evidence that the Somerton Man worked at sea and could have been a black marketeer himself. So some people believe this was a love triangle, like Prosper, the Somerton Man, and Joe all knew each other. And maybe
Oh.
Joe slept with this guy that like was Prosper's friend or
Ah.
like business or something. Maybe they knew each other and maybe she slept with him and then Prosper had him killed when he came back to town. I mean, not to cast aspersions on Prosper, as they said on the other podcast, but there are a lot of rabbit holes and theories you could go down as to like how
Right.
he got involved with these people. Maybe they met, maybe she was a spy and she had him killed. Maybe he was a spy and he got too close to somebody. Who knows? There's a lot of mysterious theories. In most recent news, a pandemic has actually brought some traction to the case, which is cool.
Hmm.
So, a virtual reality specialist named Daniel Vosshart, whose credits include Star Trek Discovery, recently joined forces with Derek Abbott and genealogist Colleen Fitzpatrick, and they've been working to construct the Somerton Man virtually.
Oh.
And yeah, and so he explains one of the things I've been doing while I had this time off during this layoff was to test this software, and I was testing it for forensic uses. So this is
Mm.
like super cool. I mean, I hope they are able to kind of crack down some cases here or crack some cases with this technology because it sounds really neat. He said he used all the collected info from the case, the body cast of the body, and made an eerily similar copy of the famous photograph. And he says, where I come in and my interpretation comes in is using my intuition on how features might look from a different angle, what might happen when sunken eyes are opened. And he continues, a large part of it was curiosity on my own end, just to figure out what this man did look like. Another part of it was, can it jog someone's memory?
Mm.
So that's where we stand. Hopefully somebody's like, "Oh, that looks like my grandpa or my great grandpa," or who knows. But maybe some war that code cracker woman said something like maybe a country will after 100 years a country will in 1948 will release some records that
Yeah.
identify him, who knows, but hopefully we solve this case eventually.
Wow, that's a great story.
Oh, sorry, that was, I mean, really long. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Mine was long too.
We've been
Wow.
on a good roll of keeping them concise. Not anymore.
Uh-oh. Well, we both also showed up real chatty today.
We
So
did. We did. So, yeah, that's the case. I've been so amped about doing this for a long time, and man, that's what got me into podcasts. This story.
wow.
Weird,
Well,
huh?
maybe this is going to be the one that gets someone else into a
Well,
podcast.
that's fun.
That'd be a fun little pass it along.
Maybe we'll have sushi and beer with them someday, and it'll be all a cycle.
Maybe they'll wear like a Third Love bra because
Yeah,
of our
they'll
show.
show me at the sushi bar. Look, I bought this with your code.
As Terry Carnation says, they'll show all 3 of their boobs. Like at once.
How sweet! What a whole heart! What a heartwarming circle that would be.
Well, thank you everyone for tuning in, and you can find all of our socials at ATWWD Podcast. Follow us on Patreon. Our website is that'swhidrink.com, where you can submit topic suggestions and your personal stories for our listeners episodes. And yeah,
I think that's it. My throat hurts from talking, and that hasn't happened in a while. So wow.
My Postmates is going to be here in 10 minutes. So
oh, amazing. You were ordering Postmates while I was talking? Rude.
I already had picked out all of my options before we started record. I'm not kidding.
Everybody go back and see if you can find the point where Em was ordering Postmates.
my phone's been down here the whole time, but I picked it out when we were just talking before we recorded, and then at the halfway,
That's smart.
At my guesstimate of your halfway point, I like only pressed like order, and that was
That's smart with the guesstimate. I hope you weren't totally off because this is a long story.
Apparently not. It's going to be here in 10 minutes.
That's actually perfect. Well, I'm going to go get my dog and then maybe order Postmates too. So
okay,
yay. And that's
why
we
drink.